Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto uses the gifts left to him by his parents and his ancestors to become stronger. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Chains. Link after link. The terrifying sound they make as they seem to hiss with malice. In the past 5 years, many have come to know the terror of these chains. Those who were foolish enough to seek out the boy, those who intended to harm the boy, were always met with their hissing, their chilling screech. Many called him a monster, a freak, a demon, and yes, he hated it. But he had yet to feel as right, as whole as he did when the chains would come alive. Naruto Uzumaki was a weird kid. Plain and simple. No one truly understood him, but that was just fine. He believed it helped him stay unique. A 5-year-old on a daily struggle to thrive in a world known for its ruthlessness, its unfairness. He didn't get why the other kids got families while he was left alone, or why no one seemed to want to be friends with him, but he would always cheer himself up by reminding himself that no one had chains. No matter how hard life was in Konoha for this young boy, the chains were always there when he truly needed them. If he was wandering the street hungry, without even noticing, a chain would show up beside him and offer him a piece of fruit or a piece of food from a stand. If someone tried to harm him, chains would always come to his defense. They even reminisced over one of his favorite chain memories, when he was playing around on Hokage's monument and accidentally fell off. The chains shot out from his back, latching on to anything they could, catching him, and slowly lowered him to the ground. After that, they seemed to move around Naruto frantically, as if to make sure he was unharmed. He never felt so cared for before, so cherished. That was upsetting that he couldn't bring out the chains when he wanted. It frustrated him to no end. They were his, they came out of his body, so why the hell couldn't he make them come out when he wanted? Breathe in, breath out. He listened to the whisper in his head. Oh yeah, that was the other thing. He had a voice in his head, or more like a whisper. It was kinda like his chains in that it only came around when he seemed to need it, and it only seems to say a couple of words at a time. It would tell him what words were when he had difficulty reading them, but only on the really hard ones. It would help him calm down when he got upset, and even would whisper directions such as left or right. At first, he didn't know why, but he later learned he was straying away from the village folk that meant him harm. More than anything, at random times, even in his dreams, he could hear the whisper say, "King." As far back as he could remember, the word king seemed to resonate with him. He thought the Hokages were cool, especially the fourth, but he wanted to be a king. He said it to anyone who would listen, screamed it to anyone who would call him otherwise. Naruto was now walking home to his apartment on the outer end of the village when he heard the whisper in his head. Brun. It sounded harsh in his head. He thought that he didn't hear it correctly, but the second time the voice spoke it was very clear. Brun. The whisper now a full-blown scream. The feminine shout rocked his head, but it got him moving and fast. They ran without concern of direction, just a sickening feeling looming over his shoulders. He felt sick and he wanted to vomit, but something just kept telling him that he couldn't stop running. He glanced back just to make sure nothing was following him, but much to his dismay, 9 white faces with 2 black holes for eyes seemingly floating without bodies, seemed to be chasing him, and they were catching up quickly. He was scared, terrified to be accurate, but Naruto was a weird kid. There was no why me or what do they want. The only question Naruto wanted to ask was, where were his chains? He wanted to hear the calming hum, the melody of the hissing, the rattling. He didn't want to be in danger to wield what was his, but it seemed like that was the requirement, so he stopped running. He felt that even though he was scared, he didn't have to run. He was in the middle of the forest in the middle of the night, while 9 white masked strangers surrounded him, and he could somewhat feel something coming from these strangers. It was like massive pressure, one that he felt would crush him completely. As they took steps closer, seemingly pulling out kunai and tantos from thin air, Naruto could feel the pressure increase as he was finding it harder and harder to breathe. Please, please. Come out, come out, come out. Naruto thought over and over, desperate for the chains to come alive once more and protect him from his assailants. You are. Naruto once again heard the voice in his head, but it was so much clearer this time, as if someone was talking directly into his ear. Just then one of the masked phantoms lunged at Naruto, blade out and ready to skewer him. As the distance between the two grew ever shorter, Naruto felt it. He heard the voice crystal clear as it shouted in his mind, "You're a king." As dozens of chains exploded from Naruto's body in every direction in what seems to be like a second, effectively eliminating his pursuers as they were run through by the chains and their arrowhead-like tips. That was a gruesome scene, to say the least, but Naruto's only focus was on his chains. He was overjoyed. Even in the worst of situations, they were still here for him. He felt they would always be. He reached out and touched one of them, and as he made contact, his entire world went black. In a world, Naruto opened his eyes to find himself in what seemed to be a vast desert. He could make out some trees in the distance, but mostly it was just white sand and a black sky, without a single star in the sky. Naruto looked around and saw a small plateau, and on it sat a seemingly tall, voluptuous woman with large amounts of scarlet hair, thickly braided and located in the front and back of her body as pairs, all of which have bows near its ends. The frontal braids also have 2 golden ornaments near the upper sections. And swaying behind her, 9 crimson-orange tails for her namesake. Naruto started to move closer and closer to her. With no idea who she was or where he was, his only hope was that this woman had some answers that could help him get back home. Now he stood in front of this beautiful woman. He didn't know why, but he felt the sensation while looking at the woman. He felt safe, safer than he had ever felt before. The woman slowly opened her eyes as the boy was standing in front of her. Her face, especially those magma red eyes, glowing with power, while donning light red lipstick, was a true delight to gaze upon. Naruto found himself blushing while trying to find the courage to speak, but before he got the chance, and Naruto, the woman seemed to have a bit of difficulty getting his name out, and much to his surprise, it looked like the woman was about to crying, evident by the lone tear he saw ran down her cheek as she said his name. "You know me? Who are you? And where the hell are we?" Naruto spat out questions after question as his anxiety rose. All of those negative feelings seemed to fade away as the woman reached out and touched his face. "Of course I know you, Naruto-sama." Naruto never felt a warmth like the one she seemed to emit. "I'm just so sorry I wasn't able to protect you better. To destroy all those that would oppose you." Naruto was confused by the woman's words, but he was far too wrapped up in the warm feeling to care about anything else. "But now you're here. My king." King. Her king. Naruto lifted his head to make eye contact with the woman. "I'm your king?" he asked innocently. Yes, he always wanted to be a king, a ruler who everyone would respect and love, but he wasn't there yet, so why was this lady calling him king? It was at this time that Kurama decided to fill Naruto in on everything, his lineage, his parents, his position as a human sacrifice. She told him of the relationship she had with his parents, how close they were and how she helped turn them into the shinobi they were before their demise. Naruto was blown away by everything he learned that night. He had a clan, though it had been destroyed by those scared of their might and sealing prowess. He had parents, though they died trying their best to protect him and the village from Kurama, who was being controlled by some masked intruder. He had a kingdom, even if it lied in ruin, it was his, and he wanted to see it. He wanted to see a kingdom even if he had to make it himself, much to Kurama's excitement. "Yes, yes, you are a king. And you shall have your kingdom, my lord. I will train you the way your parents intended to, and make you a force to be reckoned with." Kurama spoke with the utmost resolve, and Naruto was matching that excitement. He was going to be trained by the Kyuubi, the incarnate of power, the entity that helped make his parents into the flea-on-sight shinobi everyone feared or respected. But he had a question. "My chains, do you know how to make them work? Like, can you teach me how to use them whenever I want?" Kurama smiled and answered her young king. "I know what your mother did, she had chains too, and trust me, she loved to use them. I will teach you what I learned from her, but I myself can't use the chains, so it will be more on you to master them." Naruto was beyond excited, though he had much more questions. "Wait, I understand why you say I'm royalty and stuff, but why do you keep calling me king?" From what Kurama told Naruto, she was a Bijuu, the strongest of them. Whether or not she was sealed in him or not, why would someone or something so strong refer to some kid with so much respect? She herself didn't have an answer for him, she just felt that he should be treated as such. Maybe it was her connection to Kushina and Minato, maybe it was the latent potential she felt within him, she couldn't exactly say, but she answered him with what she felt was best to say. "To be honest, it's just a feeling I've always felt even when your parents first shared the pregnancy with me. I told them both of what you would be, a king. A true ruler whose power and influence will be known throughout the known world. You will be centered. You will be decisive. You shall live with integrity. You will protect your realm and provide order. You will create and inspire creativity in others and will bless the lives of those under you. I believe in you and what you're capable of completely. I am willing to follow you on your journey. I'll do whatever I must for my king." Kurama's soft features shining through as she delivered her message to Naruto. He could feel her sincerity, and he wanted to respond in kind. No one had ever believed in him before, had ever thought he would amount to anything. He was deemed an abomination, a demon, yet here was one of the strongest beings on the planet declaring her fealty to him. He felt something new swell up deep within himself. He knew what he wanted. Strength, the strength to defend himself, best anyone in his path, to accomplish all he set out to. With Kurama's help, Naruto knew he would become something more than anyone could have ever thought. It was like he was awake for the first time. "Kurama, I want to be the king that you envision. I want to build an empire like no other. One that won't fall even if the entire world is against us. The world feared the Uzumaki and what they were capable of, but I'll bring them to a new period of prosperity." Kurama looked at him with pride and a bit of surprise. Who knew Naruto knew big words like that? "You are already a king, my dear Naruto, but we will make you into the greatest there's ever been. When we are done with you, you will become a living paradox. 2 years had passed since that fateful day where Naruto and Kurama were introduced. Kurama took it upon herself to fully instruct Naruto on the ways of his people, the Uzumaki. Kurama had absorbed a massive amount of information on the clan from Kushina, who after Yuzushiaga's demise, did everything she could to learn more about her people. She spent years collecting what she could from the ruins, from weaponry to scrolls containing much of the complex seals that the Uzumaki had formulated. With how skilled they were, they had made it so only an Uzumaki would have been able to utilize anything that she had found. Even though they had fallen, the Uzumaki made sure that there would be little to no spoils of war for their enemies. Kurama trained Naruto every day in all that she could think of. She instructed him on the ways of chakra, giving him multiple exercises to better his control and utilization. She had informed him of chakra nature, and how one could convert its properties such as element and shape to produce ninjutsu. Naruto had learned he had two nature affinities of water and wind, just like his mother, which made him work twice as hard at learning, developing, and mastering these elements. Naruto was also working on learning the taijutsu of his clan, a style that emphasized the crucial aspects of speed, precision, and flexibility. He was becoming ever more proficient every day. Though he was making strides, he was still young. Kurama only allowed him to learn the basics of all he was instructed in, and when he finished it, it was back to square one. She wanted his foundation to be as strong as possible. After all, no structure can stand without a solid foundation. Kurama also began schooling Naruto in the special chakra practices that the Uzumaki followed. They seemed to have a deeper connection with chakra. They view it as an internal force that is influenced by the user's mental and emotional state. With this in mind, the Uzumaki established 4 principles to be applied when using chakra. 10. Enshroud, the practice of covering oneself in their chakra, but controlling and maintaining it so excess chakra doesn't leak out. This technique not only bolsters their defenses, but helped extend the Uzumaki's already impressive vitality and longevity. Zetsu suppress, has one completely suppressed the energy into themselves. This enhances sensory abilities and acts as a rejuvenation technique, albeit a minor one. Barien enhance, allows one to once again emit chakra out like 10, but focuses on outputting a larger amount of aura, projecting it outwards explosively. This amplifies the user's physical strength and durability, and provides a large pool of energy for any advanced techniques or individual skills they decide to use. Finally, Hatsu act was the manifestation of one's aura, an ability that the user seems to develop depending on their will. Kurama also taught him that the Uzumaki had classifications for a person, depending on what Hatsu they might have developed. There were 6 in total: enhancers who strengthened themselves or items using chakra, transmuters who were able to change the properties of their chakra, much like shape or elemental manipulation, emitters who were able to separate their chakra from themselves with ease, manipulators who could control animate and inanimate objects, conjurers who were able to create using chakra, and specialists whose ability might not fit in any other category. At first, Kurama thought Naruto was a conjurer due to his chains, but in these 2 years, she changed her opinion to believing he was a specialist. Naruto had been training incredibly hard when it came to his chains, able to summon them from almost anywhere on his person, change the shape, length, weight, strength, and more. And though his control with them was leaps and bounds what it had been before, it seemed like his chains had a mind of their own. They would appear out of nowhere to defend him, skillfully deflecting projectiles, defending his blind spots. They would even wrap around certain body parts, melding together and changing to form armor of some sorts on him. To say Naruto was happy about this development was an understatement. Sentient chains that could defend, attack, and transform. He then dubbed them King's Guard, always with him, always ready to defend him at a moment's notice. He felt it was the most appropriate name, and they seemed to agree as they sprung to life and seemed to dance around him. At that point, he noticed that his chains had changed color, from the crimson-orange hue they once had, to a pure black, as if one was staring into a void. Kurama thanked the cosmos that Minato and Kushina were able to construct the safe house they had been using as a training location. Naruto's parents were monsters in the shinobi world for lack of a better term, and as such, they had amassed a good deal of enemies in their time. But that being the case, they wanted to have a place that they could to the best of their ability guarantee the safety of their prince. With their combined skills and with much instruction and guidance from Kurama, they had constructed an underground bunker, with all that their prince would need to grow into a fine king. Seals covered practically every inch of the bunker, with multiple functions that Naruto constantly expressed his appreciation of Kurama's extensive knowledge of. Multiple training areas with resistant seals. They would hamper the user and allow them to work themselves up to a point where they couldn't feel the effects anymore. Naruto was happy to be on the 10th of the 100 levels of resistance, each one unlocked after a trial where the participant has to tag makers that appear in the room in a certain amount of time. There were also training puppets controlled by seals with difficulty levels worked in as well. Some of the more advanced rooms were littered with Minato's prize dilation seals, allowing one to experience days in a matter of minutes. A death sentence for any human dumb enough to take on the challenge, unless they were proficient in the art of 10, allowing them to combat the ravages of advanced time. There was also an armory which Naruto appropriately renamed the trophy room. Weapons, armors, and tools littered the room, and while Kurama didn't know what everything was, she informed him of what she thought was most noteworthy items in the vault. Kurama's favorite item in the armory was something she had a hand in making. The red and black tactical wakizashi sitting on a pedestal in its black sheath with a red line running down the middle. Kushina, Minato, and Kurama put their combined knowledge and skill together to create this tool, one they felt was worthy of their heir. Kurama told Naruto of the many multi-purpose seals placed on the weapon to increase its durability, sharpness, and weight, though the coolest function of the weapon is that it was multiple weapons in one. Kushina's masterpiece was a special sealing matrix she had devised that allowed the weapon to change forms, depending on what the user would want. Unfortunately, they would have to be programmed into it, there being only 5 slots it seems, one of them being the wakizashi. Paradox Edge was what Naruto dubbed it, happy he got a chance to put his creativity to good use. Naruto was overjoyed, regardless of what life had been before meeting Kurama and learning the truth, he now knew he was loved. He knew that if they could have, his parents would be here, helping him grow stronger, showering him with love and praise. And even though they weren't here, they had done so much to make sure no matter what, he would always have what he needed. This place had everything he had needed. There was food, water, bookshelves full of valuable knowledge that he had been deprived of by the village. The village honestly something he didn't like to think about too much. But all the information Kurama had told him definitely changed his perception of the village. Minato, in what little time they had left, had a messenger towed with explicit instructions on what to do with Naruto's upbringing, taking the situation into account. They also left information regarding who should care for him in case of their demise, his godparents of Jiraiya and Tsunade, who had both been made aware of the situation by separate messenger toads. His parents, even in their last moments, tried their best to make sure he would be taken care of, and it seems that their memory and efforts were being spat on. His lineage was never supposed to be hidden from him. What type of parents would have wished for that? He came from a clan of sealing geniuses, yet no one even told him that the Uzumaki had ever existed. He was barely provided with the essentials, basically having to steal, ration, or wait for one of the times his chains felt it necessary to grab him something. His father was a Hokage, yet he was treated like he was less than a person. All the people who should have known who he was, did, yet not a single one seemed too concerned for him over the last 7 years. Even Naruto's opinion on the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, had changed drastically. Once a grandfather figure, now seemed like a bumbling old fool. He withheld everything from Naruto, a man with jutsu allowing him to watch over his entire village, yet the son of its savior was left to fend for himself. Pow. Disappointing. Kurama wouldn't allow the village to hinder her king's growth, and more than it already had. With Naruto's chakra control where it needed to be, Kurama instructed him to find a copy of the Shadow Clone Jutsu, a technique that allowed someone to make solid clones whose memories were absorbed by the original upon the clones had been banished. But this technique in his repertoire, he was able to propel his training in all fields by leaps and bounds. Kurama limited the clones for training to 3 per field, except for all academics and sealing, for which he allowed a whopping total of 9. The original Naruto would spend his time in his inner world, learning what he could from Kurama to use in the physical plane, then to the training areas for testing, workouts, and such. Naruto loved the stories of old, stories of kings and empires making their claim in this world. He was learning to be a ruler like no other, and that dedication to his goal only seemed to help him grow smarter, wiser, and more decisive. He was a king, his instincts would never steer him wrong. But even at this young age, Naruto had begun contemplating the best plan to achieve his goals, forming his empire. He knew that no individual could accomplish such a feat, it would take a team. He would have to gather strong allies to make his dreams come true, and today he would be making the first of them, as well as a lifelong friend, Konoha. The Hidden Leaf hadn't changed much in the last 2 years, except for one major event. Due to the discrimination the Uchiha had felt, they grew resentful. Under the leadership of the clan head, Hyugaku Uchiha, there was to be a coup overthrowing the current powers of the Leaf. The Tachi Uchiha, eldest son of Hyugaku, took it upon himself to protect his village by slaughtering his clan, leaving only his younger brother Sasuke, and adopting the mantle of an S-ranked criminal, to continue projecting his home and his brother from afar. The truth of that night was known by only a select few, the Hokage and his advisors, along with Jiraiya, but little did they know that Naruto also knew this secret. Before Kurama's tutelage, Naruto was already creative, but with new outlets besides pranking. Some of the things he came up with could either be considered ingenious or insane. One of the creations was a set of matrices that would allow him to listen from a receiver seal, after playing the transmitter seal on a surface, even skin. He also worked in a camo feature that took very precise calligraphy, which seemed to be like second nature to him. Thank you Uzumaki TNA. Naruto had many places in the village littered with these seals, marking the receivers with the locations, so he knew which seal would let him listen in on who. He didn't know if this village could turn into an enemy one day, and he was no longer a fool. He didn't want to have to, but if needed, he would have the leverage and whatever else he would need to defend himself and his allies from the Hidden Leaf. He had seen firsthand how quick they were to further their agendas, sacrifices be damned. Sasuke had changed as well. He was constantly angry, constantly battered and bruised, onlookers surmising his wounds as results from training. He seemed to want nothing to do with anyone. He viewed himself as a failure, unable to lift a finger against his older brother. Itachi forced upon his brother a cruel punishment, forcing him to view the death of their brethren over and over. Whether it was a minute or an hour, Sasuke couldn't tell, but it wasn't something he was able to get out of his mind. He figured growing stronger, strong enough to kill Itachi and avenge his clan, would be the only thing that would be able to clear the terrifying images from his head, that is until a certain blonde approached him one starry night. Sasuke had been sitting near a stream, reflecting on the progress he made in his training. Though he had been getting stronger, he felt it was all in vain. It's still not enough. Regardless of what I do, I'm still not at his level. Itachi already had a Sharingan by my age, yet I can't even execute the kunai technique perfectly. It was then that Sasuke heard footsteps approaching. He looked up to see the blonde known as Naruto standing over him, looking just as beat up as he did, if not more so. Mind if I sit here? Naruto asked with a big grin on his face. He would have normally ignored the boy or just left, but seeing that grin, for some reason Sasuke simply answered with a blank expression. Sure. The boys knew of each other, Sasuke being the last Uchiha and Naruto being the demon. It was hard not to know of probably the two most famous or infamous kids of the leaf. The boys also had a sense of respect for each other. Whenever Sasuke had seen Naruto in the village, it was either he was doing some kind of exercise like running and the like. He couldn't remember the last time he had seen the blonde walk anywhere actually. Seeing Naruto hard at work would make him go back to training, even if he had just decided to take a break. The same could be said for Naruto. Even before that tragic night, he would catch Sasuke training his physical abilities and ninjutsu. He was beyond surprised to learn that Sasuke could already perform elemental ninjutsu. If there was anyone to be interested in forming any kind of bonds with, it was someone who put their all into accomplishing their goals, and he could see that it was Sasuke. What's with all those bruises on you? You lose a fight? Naruto asked, snickering at the end of his question. No, I didn't lose a fight. I was training, idiot. Besides, you're the one who looks like they just lost a fight. Sasuke told Naruto, annoyed that he would even suggest that. Well, I guess I kinda did, you know. It was part of my training. Naruto answered, scratching the back of his head. The truth was he had just finished a sparring session with 3 clones to further polish his basics. And why the hell are you training? Sasuke asked, curious about the boy's reasoning. No one their age seemed to be too interested in the ninja ways yet, so why was he? Naruto felt that this might be his chance, so he decided to take it. He wanted to see if he could make a friend. It's because I'm a king and kings need to be strong, Naruto proclaimed proudly. Sasuke was a bit confused though. What the hell did he mean by king? What are you on about, you idiot? How are you a king? Naruto simply turned to him, and Sasuke saw something different. Almost like the person he was talking to had suddenly switched places with someone new, yet at the same time familiar. The feeling he gave off, the pressure, but it was a bit different. Instead of it feeling suffocating, it felt warm. Vast, warm, and encompassing, that is how he would describe what he was feeling. Kurama was against the idea of her king associating with an Uchiha, one of which was responsible for controlling her and forcing her to do their bidding, costing Minato and Kushina their lives, and Naruto his parents. But her king had made up his mind, and she was too proud of who he was becoming and how he chooses to go about this to voice any objections. It was at this time that Naruto informed Sasuke of his life, who he was, what he sought out to accomplish, his lineage, while keeping a secret or two to himself. Sasuke was blown away. Sitting beside him was actual royalty. The last of an empire, the only heir to one of the greatest ninja the world had ever seen. Even someone as skilled as Itachi admired the yellow flash. Sasuke had a bit of difficulty, but something told him that the one in front of him had zero intention of lying to him. He even remembered that one of his mother's old friends was named Kushina. She had a picture and would do a prayer for her every week as far as he could remember. So, after a barrage of understandable questions, he finally had to ask, "Why did you tell me any of this?" Naruto stared at him for a brief moment before answering. "I feel like you might be the only person who might understand me. It might not be the same thing, but we have both lost in a sense. More importantly, I feel like you would understand what I want to accomplish." Sasuke continued to stare at the boy. "I guess I can understand the first part, but what do you mean I'll understand what you want to accomplish? Before I answer you, I have one more story to tell you." though I doubt you like or even believe what I have to say." Sasuke already didn't like the feel of this. The air around the blonde changed. It was more serious. Sasuke could have sworn the temperature around them dropped. "I'm going to tell you the truth of that night, the night Itachi slaughtered your clan." Sasuke was instantly infuriated. He wanted to punch this kid's face in for so much as mentioning that night, but something he didn't know what, but something was telling him he had to listen. And so, he did. He listened to every detail, even how he obtained the information. He couldn't believe it, he didn't want to, but no matter what he thought, he couldn't convince himself that it was a lie. He just couldn't. "Berg!" Sasuke yelled, then pounced on Naruto, and began pummeling his face, blow after blow. Regardless of his attacks, it seemed that they were doing nothing to the boy. Crystal blue eyes remained in contact with his eyes of onyx. He knew he was telling the truth, his clan traitors, his brother a martyr, and he was left blissfully ignorant. He stopped his assault to ask yet again, "Why? Why tell me any of this?" Sasuke asked, tears streaming down his face as he stared back at Naruto. Searing pain erupted from his eyes as his world became clear, yet more cloudy. "Because you should be allowed to decide what your life is for yourself. How can anyone expect you to be your own person when an event like that defines you? You are already training yourself into the ground, and for what? To kill your brother based on a lie. Instead of growing for yourself, your hopes and dreams, you gain strength for revenge. And then what?" Naruto responded. He could feel it, he was getting through to him. Why do you care?" Sasuke fell back. He didn't know what else to ask or to say really. "Because if it were up to everyone else, I would have stayed ignorant too. So much of my potential wasted simply because I was misguided on how to properly harness it. Knowing who I am, where I come from, that will allow me to decide who I want to be. You deserve that same liberty. No matter how cruel it is, it's your life, you should know the truth and decide from there what you want to do." Naruto sat up and answered Sasuke. Before Sasuke sat a child a couple of months younger than himself, yet felt as if he was being consoled by an older brother. "I want to be a great king, so when I bring back the Uzumaki, they will not only have a wondrous empire to call home, but have a powerful leader who will be able to protect them. One that will prevent any tragedy from befalling them ever again." Naruto's words awakened something within Sasuke. Even before the truth of that night, he wanted to one day bring his clan back to its former glory, but now he wanted to establish a new Uchiha. One that wouldn't succumb to the vices of the previous, a virtuous Uchiha who put loyalty and faith before matters as self-absorbed as pride. One could wield pride to strengthen instead of weakening, and he knew that now. "But before I do any of that, I need friends that could help make my dreams a reality. Things might get messy along the way, but I think you might be just the guy for the job. Who knows, we might just take over the world while we're at it." A massive grin on Naruto's face. He was serious and Sasuke knew it, but what could he say? This kid had basically flipped his world on its head, and now he was trying to recruit him on some build an empire take over the world scheme. "Trust me when I say, you'd make the perfect knight. With you by my side, we could change the world, Sasuke. We could re-establish both our clans to heights unseen ever before. We could destroy this stupid world or shinobi for one of knights, of true titans." Naruto stood up and extended his hand to a sitting Sasuke. All Sasuke could do was stare in awe. The only thoughts in his mind were about how absolutely insane all this sounded, how insane this entire night was. Regardless of all of that, he felt that there was no other response but to take the boy's hand, get on one knee and say, "I'm honored, Naruto-sama. I, Sasuke Uchiha, will follow you as we create this empire together." He didn't honestly understand, but he felt he had to put his faith in this boy, no, this man. Sasuke loved those of his clan, though in all honesty, had a hard time connecting to them. Even when it came to his brother, it was more a matter of idolization or admiration than it was of kinship. That wasn't the case with the blonde, for as they shared looks, words, blows, ideologies, it all made sense. This bond, it was one that the raven-haired boy thought might be worth the effort. "Excellent. We will get stronger, and we will take the world by storm." Kurama laughed hysterically. Thinking about the strength Naruto had now, and the potential of both him and the Uchiha for growth, the world had no idea what was coming. The king and his knight. 5 years had passed in the Hidden Leaf since the night Sasuke swore his fealty to Naruto. But the new lease on life and someone he could truly depend on, Sasuke focused his efforts on becoming a knight worthy of the title, as well as becoming strong enough to establish and lead the new Uchiha, one of the soon-to-be founding clans of the new Uzumaki. Naruto and Sasuke, with a goal in mind, spent their time training, honing the skills they would need to take on the world. Naruto had instructed Sasuke in the Uzumaki chakra techniques, and to say Sasuke was surprised would have been an understatement. He was flabbergasted. That was the only word he could think of to aptly describe how he felt when introduced to what he described as some sort of cheat. Sasuke had even questioned how a clan equipped with this sort of ability could be toppled. Naruto had informed him that while the techniques were powerful, they took dedication and patience to master, and took constant training to hone and improve. That wouldn't be odd if it was a skill only a few had, and even fewer mastered, and once he had undergone the training himself, Sasuke understood what Naruto meant. It took time and a lot of pain, but Sasuke became proficient in these techniques himself, as well as the advanced techniques he learned along with Naruto. The techniques of Gyo focus, which allows one to focus a larger than normal portion of energy on a part of themselves to enhance it, leaving the rest of themselves more vulnerable. Buy and conceal allowed one to completely erase their presence, a skill both of them felt would be crucial in their world. The end circle would allow one to expel energy in a radius around themselves, detecting all that goes past its confines. Shun Shroud allowed the user to wrap the object in their energy, strengthening it. KO Temper would put all one's energy in one part of their body, leaving the rest of them defenseless, while KEN Fortify was keeping a defensive layer of energy around oneself for prolonged periods. Finally, RYU Flow was the maintenance and fluctuation of one's energy depending on what one might need. For example, shifting 50% of one's power for a punch, then immediately distributing the necessary power to guard or go for another strike. Sasuke learned that not only did the Uzumaki art vastly improve his stamina while using his Sharingan, but it also improved his progression and its performance. He was glad he had a valuable tool like his Sharingan, but Sasuke didn't want that to define him. He would become strong without relying on it, especially when he was able to see what Naruto was capable of for the first time, without relying on anything you could consider inherited. He had always thought Itachi was strong, but after seeing Naruto, he felt like that word needed to be revisited. Then to learn that Naruto was the container of the strongest tailed beast, it was fair to say that Sasuke was numb to it at that point. But in all that time, with all the training, the sneaking in and out of the village with the help of their shadow clones, and all the stuff they experienced out in the world, Sasuke learned that he was right to put his faith in Naruto. Both of them had grown from the young and ignorant children they once were. They knew they had much to learn, much to experience, but they were men in their own right. After years of biding their time, the day had come for them to be able to start moving towards their ambition. Question was, how would the world react? Konoha, the two were walking beside each other headed towards the Ninja Academy on what was to be their last day. They were to receive their team assignments and Jonin Sensei today. It didn't matter to them who they would end up with, though it was a fascinating enough subject to help pass the time. Who do you think we'll end up with, Naruto-sama? Sasuke inquired. The raven-haired teen had grown to be about 5'2", just an inch taller than Naruto. He wore a skin-tight gray and black high-collared shirt that displayed his muscular build quite well. His belt tied like an obi sash around his hakama pants. They were dark gray near the top, with several loops for his belt and 2 buttons, both of which are undone. The rest of the pants were black with a small, lighter stripe of gray on the bottom hem. To finish the ensemble, a slightly modified katana, with a slightly wider than average blade and a dip along the back, near the hilt. It had a red and black handle and rested in a matching sheath, on the back of his waist. The old man will most likely place us on the same team together, with Kakashi being our sensei. With him being my father's last student, plus the fact that he is the only other person beside you in the village with a Sharingan, it probably seems like the most logical option. Naruto was garbed in a white red-lined haori that has a hood, along with slightly shorter than normal, light-colored hakama. Underneath his haori, he wore a navy blue shirt with a large white X pattern on the front, along with a piece of armor, a dull red section that covered his abdomen. Tied to his side was his paradox edge, in its black sheath with a red line running down the middle. I guess that makes sense, although I doubt that Uchiha has much to teach me about our Dojutsu. If we're being honest, he probably doesn't have much to teach us. I doubt anyone in this village does. Sasuke responded. Though he did address Naruto with respect, their conversations were that between lifelong friends, without restraint or restriction. That may be true, but it is far too early to put ourselves under the scope of the village. We will play the parts of loyal shinobi, maybe reveal a trick or two. Besides that, we will do our best to remain no more than above average genin. Naruto spoke with wisdom, a clear sign of his maturity in the last couple of years. I understand your reasoning, Naruto-sama. With our operatives moving throughout the elemental nations, it will only be a matter of time before we can end the farce. I don't care to play the brooding Uchiha role any longer. Sasuke's aggravation was warranted. He had acted like a cold, unfeeling jerk, yet it seemed like most of the girls in their class only gravitated towards him more. He thought that doubling down and ignoring all their advances would fix the problem, but it only seemed to make the girls more enamored with him. That must suck to be the most popular ladies' man in school, meanwhile I'm the worst of the worst. But if the village thought that the Kyuubi brat could be a threat at such a young age, it would have made a lot of our work much harder. I agree, acting like hormone-fueled adolescents can be taxing, but in all fairness, the clones did a majority of that acting. Naruto retorted. My king, with all due respect, you are better off burning this village to the ground. It's done nothing for you or the Uchiha, and it would be one potential obstacle out the way. Kurama let her thoughts be known. She was his teacher, his surrogate mother, his closest advisor. Sure, she spoke with malice and animosity towards the village, but Naruto knew she was making an honest suggestion, and it would be foolish to ignore her words. That look on your face tells me that Mr. Kurama probably feels similarly to me. The farce is more annoying than anything. Sasuke had been introduced and on occasion trained by Kurama in Naruto's inner world. She wouldn't admit it, but she grew to like the boy and thought he was a perfect fit for her king's head knight, especially with what he was capable of. Anyways, the teams are usually made of 3-man squads, meaning we need a third. It will most likely be one of the females in our class. No need to put 2 Dojutsu on one team so it won't be Hinata. So, we get fangirl number 1 or fangirl number 2. Question is, which one's worse? Naruto remembered how crazy these girls seemed to be for Sasuke. They were his number 1 fans, and had gone from close friends to bitter rivals in pursuit of his affection. I can't see how much either one could contribute. I'd have to go with Ino though, at least she has access to Yamanaka clan jutsu. Could be quite useful. Sasuke made it a point to evaluate all those he came across to see if they might be an asset to the empire they were working to build. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. No use stressing over what we can't control. If anything, explaining our sudden change might be a better use of our efforts. Naruto laughed and tapped Sasuke on the shoulder while they made their way into the academy to their class. They were the last ones to arrive, and their entrance certainly turned heads. The class was thrown for a loop. The only time these two would be seen together is during spars for class and the occasional squabble, but now here they were, looking like they had gone outfit shopping together. They even had some straps forming access on their chests. The class was abuzz with the chitter-chatter of the kids in class, until a pink-haired girl decided to get some answers. What the hell are you doing with Sasuke-kun, Naruto? And why the hell are you dressed in though? Sakura shouted before she felt that she had the wind knocked out of her, stumbling to the ground. No one other than Naruto knew what happened. As everyone just stared at Sakura, baffled by what just took place, Naruto whispered to Sasuke, "Was that necessary?" Trying his best to hide his amusement, Sasuke responded simply. She spoke out of turn, it was a justified course of action. Then he simply took his seat before Iruka came in to give out the teams. Naruto was quick to find his seat as well. Iruka noted that both Naruto and Sasuke had different appearances that were oddly similar to each other, but he pushed it aside, making a note for later. He also noted Sakura being assisted by some of the other students. She seemed to be out of breath, but overall fine. He assumed it was probably just another screaming match between the girls over the iche. With all that out of his mind, he proceeded with the team assignments. At the end of the day, it truly didn't matter. Both Naruto and Sasuke were disappointed by the turnout. Sasuke's assessment was accurate, but it was also a nice way of saying that he considered Sakura useless. Ino's could have served a purpose, however circumstantial it would have been. Naruto commemorated Sasuke on being kinder with his choice of words when describing the girls. He had told Sasuke years ago that if he had nothing nice to say, not to say anything at all. It seems like he was applying it. All the other genin teams had been picked up by their Jonin sensei, yet the 3 of them had been left waiting for hours by their tardy instructor. Naruto was quite annoyed by this. A shinobi as decorated and respected as Kakashi, someone trained by the fastest shinobi the world has known. How the fuck could he be late? Minato had to have rolled over in his grave. Whatever, I'll have to come up with a proper punishment for this jester, Naruto thought with a sinister smirk on his face. Sasuke caught the look on his lord's face and knew he was planning on punishing their instructor for his tardiness. After another hour and a few minutes of Sakura's infuriating yelling, Kakashi instructed them to meet him on the roof and decided to show off by using the shunshin to get to the roof. He was quite surprised to see Naruto and Sasuke standing on the roof, looking quite bored. "Took you long enough, sensei. We were thinking about sending out a search party," Naruto chirped, which got an amused grunt out of Sasuke. Well, how'd a couple of genin manage to beat me up here? Kakashi tried to mask it, but he was genuinely curious. From the files he had read over, neither of them possessed the skill to outspeed him to the roof. Who knows, Kakashi-sensei, maybe you're just getting slower with your old age. Naruto continued to badger the man. He wanted to see how Kakashi would respond, but before he had the opportunity to, Sakura had busted through the roof door. "Why the hell did you guys leave me?" Sakura asked in a huff. Naruto began to laugh at her annoyance, but before she could yell up a storm, Kakashi tried to get them back on track. He had admittedly wasted enough time. "Let's not dwell on the past here. Why don't we go around and introduce ourselves? Such as your likes, dislikes, goals." Sasuke retorted. "Why don't you start then, sensei?" "Alright, my name is Kakashi Haddock. Things I like and things I hate, I don't feel like telling you that. My dreams for the future, never really thought about it. As for my hobbies, I have lots of hobbies. Why don't you go next, Sasuke?" Sasuke looked at Kakashi with a cold glare. For a second, Kakashi could have sworn that Sasuke looked like a looming giant standing over him. He quickly shook his head as Sasuke took a step forward and said, "My name is Sasuke Uchiha. There isn't much I like, and there are many things I hate. My goal is to usher in a new era for the Uchiha." Kakashi was glad to see that Sasuke didn't seem fixated on hunting down and killing his brother Itachi. Kakashi then turned to Sakura for her to begin her introduction. "I'm Sakura Haruno. What I like, I mean the person I like is my hobby is, my dream for the future is Squeal." Sakura managed to get out, occasionally looking and glancing in Sasuke's direction. Sasuke did his best to hide his annoyance with a pink-haired banshee, and Kakashi just smiled and turned towards Naruto. "And last but not least, it's your turn, Blondie." As the man nonchalantly pointed at his new student, "My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I like ramen, especially Ichiraku's. I also like to train. We don't have to talk about what I don't like, but as for my goal, it's simply, I'm going to change the world." Kakashi couldn't wrap his mind around Naruto and Sasuke, the feeling they emitted, the confidence they carried, and their looks. When Kakashi looked in their eyes, he could have sworn he had been looking at Anbu agents, ready to go on a deadly mission. Sakura fit her file perfectly, but what he expected to see out of the other two, the arrogance of the Uchiha and the attention fiend in Naruto, were nowhere to be seen. Maybe they're just trying to seem cool in front of their new Jonin sensei. I'll just have to see what they are made of. Kakashi informed his new team that they are to be evaluated tomorrow morning. If they are unable to pass the test, they will be sent back to the academy. After he told them to meet him at their team's training ground at 7 in the morning, he shunted it away, leaving the newly formed Team 7 on the roof of the academy. "Guess we'll see you tomorrow, Sakura. Come on, Sasuke, seems we have time for some extra tuning for the blades." Naruto and Sasuke turned to the door of the roof, but Sakura dashed in front of them, blocking their exit. "Hold on. Where are you guys going? And why are you two suddenly buddies? What did you do to Sasuke Uide?" Sakura wasn't able to finish her insult towards Naruto before she noticed Sasuke holding his sword to her neck. "Try to insult Naruto-sama again, and it will be the last thing you do," Sasuke warned her. Sakura felt like she was being crushed, she couldn't even breathe. "Sasuke, let the poor girl be, we have the training to do." But the weight of his voice, the impact, Sakura had never felt anything like it. The closest thing she could compare it to was whenever she saw the third Hokage speak to the village or came to speak to her class. He spoke like a leader and everything he had to say seemed important. As quickly as the sword was drawn, it was sheathed. Naruto then made his way towards the edge of the roof, with Sasuke following behind him. Naruto looked back at Sakura with a huge grin on his face and said, "Oh Sakura, be sure to eat some breakfast." Regardless of what Kakashi said, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. The boys then proceeded to walk off the roof, falling straight down. Sakura ran towards the edge of the roof to see what happened to them, just to look over and see nothing. They were gone. It didn't even look like they hit the ground. What the fuck is going on here? Sakura was getting a migraine trying to wrap her head around the events that just unfolded. The next day, Sakura had been waiting for 3 hours before Naruto and Sasuke showed up. Usually, she would have run up to Sasuke, showering him with affection, but after yesterday's events, she was hesitant. She had never been as scared as she was when Sasuke threatened her. And the weird vibe Naruto gave off, the only word Sakura could come up with to describe it was dangerous. "Good morning, Sakura. You look well. I hope you had a filling breakfast. I'm sure whatever Kakashi has in store for us will be a challenge." Naruto greeted with his signature smile. "Good morning, Naruto." "Yes, I did. Good morning to you as well, Sasuke-kun." Sakura greeted them both, trying her best not to anger Sasuke. Until she knew more about the new relationship these two seemed to have, she would be walking on eggshells. "Good morning, Sakura. How long have you been waiting for Kakashi?" "About 3 hours. I've been here since 7. Despite how upsetting waiting had been, it was quite the relief to Sakura that her love hadn't still been angry with her. "Well, you won't have to wait too much longer. Kakashi should be here in the next couple of minutes." Naruto informed Sakura, which just raised more questions for her. Though as prophesized, Kakashi appeared with a perverted book in hand. "Good morning, team. Sorry I'm late. I'm afraid I got lost on the road of life." Kakashi was quite surprised to see all of them looking rested and ready. It seems like they were a bit smarter than he gave them credit for. "Let's get this started already, Kakashi-sensei. We're wasting daylight and there are better things we could be doing with our time." Sasuke spoke frankly. He could have thought of a couple of things he would rather do, like training, especially with the methods he and his new comrades had developed. Now, let's calm down, Sasuke. Since you guys seem to be so eager, why don't we have some fun? I was going to give you some boring tests, but you guys seem to have been able to see through my no breakfast trick, so all you have to do to make sure you guys don't end up back in the academy is to impress me." Kakashi smiled. He thought that putting these two boys in their place might be good for the overall development of his team. "How about if we get you to lift your headband? It's an automatic pass right then and there." I don't want to sound rude, but Sasuke's right. It's just too good of a day to waste. Naruto's words ran like a cool stream, a contrast from brash boy painted in his files. Naruto proceeded to put up the hood of his Haori to cover his eyes from the sun. Bow, and why my headband, Naruto? Simple. If one were to make the great Kakashi of the Sharingan to use his Sharingan, you must be worth something as a shinobi, right? Naruto knew he was starting to get on Kakashi's nerves, and that was exactly his goal. The boy wanted to see just what made up one of Konoha's elites. Hind, you kids get me to lift my headband, you all pass. Just do your best not to get hurt. I plan on having a bit of fun with you all. Kakashi let a small amount of killer's intent loose, and he got the response he expected from Sakura, the young girl left shaking like a leaf. The boys, on the other hand, looked at him as if he were a mere genin himself. Maybe even less. What the hell is up with these kids? I'd hate to have to hurt them for answers. Well, kinda. Kakashi got off a couple of quick stretches before stepping to the upstarts. Let's begin, shall we? As soon as Kakashi finished speaking, Sasuke appeared beside him, sword in hand. What the? Kakashi's inquiry was cut short by the Uchiha's sudden onslaught. The vet found himself oppressed by what may have been the best swordsmanship he had seen to date. He couldn't even manage to dodge all of Sasuke's attacks, jumping away with shallow cuts on his right shoulder and left thigh. But zero hesitation, Sasuke raced through hand signs. As Kakashi tried to close the gap and stop him, Naruto instantly intercepted. The prince then delivered a powerful blow to Kakashi's chest, pushing him back. In the short exchange, Kakashi noticed the black lover gauntlet that Naruto had struck him with. He was certain he wasn't wearing that earlier. Naruto turned to Sasuke. They exchanged no more than a look and a nod. The king then ripped through a set of his own signs. By the time Kakashi was able to react, the duo let their jutsu loose on the poor man. Blind style. Pressure damage. Higher style. Great flame flower. Multiple massive fireballs appeared in the air and shot towards Kakashi as Naruto released a powerful gust of compressed wind. The two techniques seemed to combine effortlessly to create a massive firestorm, which tore through most of the wooded area of the training grounds. It seemed like Kakashi was swallowed whole by the technique, but at the last moment, he was able to substitute a way to a tree a bit deeper in the forest. He wasn't able to escape unscathed, having several burns littered all over. Their jutsu was just too fast. This is insanity. No way genin should be able to perform elemental jutsu, let alone high-ranked ones like that. Before Kakashi could get his bearings, he felt something grab onto his leg. The man was viciously jerked up into the air, being swung around like a rag doll, until he was thrown out of the forest and back to the still-burning training field. Once he was able to get back on his feet, the two boys greeted him with vapid stares. "Come on, Kakashi-sensei. At this rate, we're gonna fall asleep here," Naruto shouted, finishing up with his signature smirk. "Naruto-sama, I could finish him now using my Hetsu. I see no need in continuing with this game." Meanwhile, Sakura didn't know what to think. They had begun this bout with their sensei a couple of minutes ago, yet her teammates seemed to be playing with him the whole time. They were fast, they were strong, and they were skilled. Sakura suspected that Sasuke would be able to use jutsu because he was just, well, the coolest. But Naruto. She was blown away when she saw him use wind-style jutsu, and it was so strong. I don't get it. They are making Kakashi-sensei seem like a chump. Why do they keep antagonizing him? Sakura thought, unable to understand what she was seeing. No need, Sasuke. To use Hetsu against someone of Haddock's level would be overkill. I'll take it from here. The blonde broke out in a series of stretches. Are you sure, Naruto-sama? Even without it, I'm confident that I would be able to finish this quickly. There's no need for you to bother yourself with. Sasuke was interrupted when Naruto put his hand up. No need to worry, Sasuke. It will be a good warm-up before today's training. Plus, I wanted to have a little fun with our tardy-sensei. Sasuke knew that their new sensei had already evoked the wrath of his lord. This was just the beginning of what Naruto had in mind. Be ready, Kakashi. Cause I'm coming for you. Naruto once again showed off his speed by almost instantly appearing in front of Kakashi as the two got into a taijutsu battle. Both Kakashi and Sakura were frying their brains trying to make sense of whatever was going on. Naruto was skilled, strong, and fast. Nothing like he had been growing up in the village, nothing like the Naruto that was described in his files. He still seemed to be a bit brash and bold as far as his personality, but that seemed to be the only recognizable quality he still had. Kakashi had fought Might Guy over the years in many a spar, a man revered for his prowess and taijutsu, yet Naruto was in front of him, giving him a run for his money. He had no intention of failing them after this showing, nevertheless he was interested in what else they could be hiding. The shadow clone suddenly appeared next to Naruto, throwing off the veteran. He and the boy were locked in a grapple match with one another, therefore neither of them could weave a hand sign. The original Naruto disengaged and made a single hand ram sign, signaling the clone to glow. The next moment was utter chaos as the clone burst, resulting in a sizable explosion and an even larger smokescreen. Okijama's going to have my head for all the damage to the training field, Kakashi deadpanned. The Chunin didn't want to think of what would have happened if he hadn't substituted out the way of a devastating attack. From the smoke, a black blade connected to a chain of the same color shot out at remarkable speed, headed straight for Kakashi's head. He ducked down quick enough for it to miss, but Kakashi was surprised when the weapon cut clean through the tree he was standing on, which caused the top half of the tree to fall towards him. He was quick to move to another tree by maneuvering through the air, but while midair, another chain came heading towards him. Kakashi made a clone to help him move midair, dodging the chain, but as he hit the ground, the chain made a sharp turn and shot towards him. It was a game of cat and mouse for a couple of minutes until Kakashi decided to fire a fireball to the center of the smoke. Kakashi watched as his jutsu was just cut to pieces and blown away by the quick maneuvers of the Kusurigama. With the smoke cleared, Kakashi saw the Uzumaki heir with the weapon in hand. At least one of the bladed parts was in his hand, the rest of the chain was littered over the training grounds. So, you can use a Kusurigama as well. Well. You boys seem to have a good deal of secrets. What else can you do? Kakashi was once again cut off when the chains littered on the ground snapped to life. In an instant, Kakashi was completely wrapped up. He praised the boy for being able to capture him, but he wasn't too worried about breaking free, that is until. Something's wrong, it's like the life is being sapped out of me. Kakashi tried to make sense of what was happening. Quickly losing strength, he was brought to his knees due to the fatigue. Naruto walked over and pulled Jonin's headband away from his eye, revealing the Sharingan. He then kneeled to make eye contact with his sensei. TSK, I barely got to do anything, sensei. This has been such a disappointment. Sigh, I guess we're done here. I don't think you're in any shape to continue. So, do we pass? He had no idea what was happening, how he ended up in this position. Genin brought him, a seasoned vet, to his knees. Adolescents looked upon him with sheer disappointment. Even though Sakura just stood there and watched, how could he fault her? He was embarrassed to admit it, but the looks he caught on Sakura's face during the whole bout probably mirrored his own. He had no choice, especially while he was on his knees, trapped by one of them. Trying his best to seem cool and in charge of the situation, Kakashi delivered an eye smile and said, "Yes, after that impressive showing, how could I not pass you? Congrats, Team 7. Our first mission will be 3 days from today." Kakashi thought he would need that much time to regain his strength. He was feeling more and more drained the longer he was ensnared. Sounds good to me. But the flick of his wrist, the chains seemed to simply fall off Kakashi. Naruto turned and made his way towards Sasuke, who was trying to ignore the barrage of questions being thrown out by Sakura. Once he stopped in front of them, Sasuke asked, "Are you ready, Naruto-sama? I think we've wasted enough time." "Come on, Sasuke, we're an official Genin team now. That's something to be happy about, right?" Naruto asked, receiving nothing but a blank stare. Fine, let's get out of here." Before they could leave, both Sakura and Kakashi wanted some answers. "Wait, you two. There are some things I'd like you to clarify for me." It was clear Kakashi was still feeling the effects from the mysterious weapon. "Yay. I've got some questions too." Sakura shrieked. "Sorry, you've wasted enough of the king's time for today." Sasuke's proclamation carried weight and might, causing both pink and silver hair individuals to hesitate. The purple mist began pouring from Sasuke, covering both the boys. Kakashi shot forward with what little energy he had left, though it appeared he was simply too slow. Gloved hands passed through the mist, revealing that they were already gone. Kakashi couldn't feel a trace of them at all. It was as if they were never there, to begin with. His instincts and logic brought him to only one conclusion. "I have to report to Hokage-sama." "Hahona, Kakashi, I'm sure the fact that you're before me means that you have something of value to report." The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, had been informed of the events of Kakashi's Genin graduation test. Much like all the others that had come across the two boys, Hiruzen was surprised and confused. "To be honest, Lord Hokage, I don't have anything to report." One could hear the self-criticism in Kakashi's response. The third had ordered him to get the boys to reveal the secrets they had been hiding. After weeks of missions and team training, Kakashi wasn't able to get Naruto or Sasuke to show him anything he hadn't seen during their test, or tell him anything he hadn't already known. The third found what he learned very strange. Both boys had drastically changed their attire and personalities. The once antisocial Uchiha now referred to the once worst student in the graduating class as king, and Sama, the worst student, now carried himself like a scholar, quick-witted and mouthy as all hell. And worst of all, they were strong. Scarcely so, to the point where Kakashi admitted his foolishness in not using his Sharingan the moment Sasuke's assault began. Both seemed to be proficient in elemental jutsu. Hiruzen almost had a heart attack when he heard they had both used B-rank jutsu in perfect synergy with one another. They also seemed proficient in weapon-based combat. Both of these men were war veterans, who had seen many battles between them, so neither took it lightly when Kakashi began praising their skill in weapon-based combat. He made sure to emphasize the fluidity and ease they both showed as if it was second nature to them. Hiruzen had to ask Kakashi to repeat the part about Naruto having a sword that transformed. A black and red wakizashi that seemed to change when his sight on Naruto was obstructed, seemed to become a black kusarigama with some weird energy draining ability. I imagine that the boys are still adamant to share anything related to their growth. Hiruzen fought back on when he had tried to separately interrogate them. Sasuke simply stated that he decided to take his training seriously to accomplish his goals. Naruto, on the other hand, seemed to be playing some sort of mind game. His answer was simply, "I've learned quite a bit, old man," regardless of the signature Uzumaki smile on his face. The feeling the boy gave off, Hiruzen couldn't shake. Yes, Hokage-sama. They haven't shared anything with the other graduating genin. If it wasn't for the fact that they were on a team with her, I'm sure they would ignore Sakura as well. They work together and finish whatever mission is given in no time. There have been instances where Naruto's clones just take care of everything for us. Do you think this is the Fox's doing? I know it wasn't a conclusion we wanted to make so early, but it would be foolish to ignore the possibility. The third didn't want to have to consider that they might need to take action against Naruto. Unfortunately, the fact was, if the Fox was a threat in any capacity, Hiruzen needed to be ready. Honestly, it's hard to say, sir. I haven't felt anything akin to the nine-tailed fox's chakra. Has there been any luck with the surveillance detail assigned to them? The Hokage put his best people on the young Uzumaki's trail. If one could figure anything out, it had to be his most trusted Anbu. None at all. Or not. They've reported spotting the boys training individually, being nothing more than basic taijutsu or muscle training. The only thing of note is that the Anbu stated that there were times in which the boys completely eluded them. They would look in every place they could in the village with no luck, and then, poof, they would pop up and go back to training. The couple of agents reported some worrisome info, some of them being randomly paralyzed while surveying Naruto. Others seemed to blank out completely while watching Sasuke, and he would be nowhere to be found once they came to. Sir, I think I have an idea. Hiruzen looked intrigued. Some of his best agents were completely stumped by these boys. They needed more than a plan, they needed a win. And what made that be Kakashi? I think it would be best to assign Team 7 a mission of a higher difficulty. I'll do my best to allow the team to take the lead and see if they're willing to reveal more if they are more self-reliant. That is quite a risky plan, Kakashi. Regardless of what you've reported, these are still a team of genin, especially young Sakura. Putting them in harm's way simply to see what they are hiding might do more harm than good. Regardless of the developments, all the children of this village were his children. No parent would recklessly thrust their kid into danger. I understand, Lord Hokage. I wouldn't be suggesting such a thing if I didn't think they could handle it. They have shown to possess a good deal of strength. I'm not too worried about them, and I'll be able to take care of Sakura if necessary. I'll even try to get in some training. Kakashi wanted answers too. He was decimated by the boys, and it was obvious they were holding back. The man was somewhat ashamed to admit that the events of that day are replayed in his head over and over. Hiruzen stewed over it for a bit. The Leaf had produced its fair share of talents from the likes of Kakashi and Minato, to more infamous examples like Orochimaru and Itachi. It wasn't unheard of for there to be younger shinobi with the skill and talent to take on more seasoned opponents. Plus, this might be an opportune chance for Kakashi to observe the boys. They seemed to go out of their way to be secretive, but maybe they would feel more comfortable revealing those secrets outside the village. Alright then, Kakashi, I have a mission in mind. A bridge builder from the wave needs an escort and protection team back to his village, and will remain with him until the bridge is finished. The wave is currently under the control of a business tycoon by the name of Gato, who has hired several rogue shinobi and mercenary groups to form a makeshift militia. The job is simple, but there are a few unknowns such as the strength and number of the group under Gato's employee, but from the lack of shinobi villages in the region, I'd estimate that there shouldn't be a threat over C rank. In case of emergency, I will have Team Guy on standby, though based on your confidence and all we've witnessed, or haven't, I doubt they'll be necessary. This mission could be very beneficial for the Leaf. But the new trade route, as well as more knowledge on who the Uzumaki and Uchiha could do, the Leaf could be seeing a boisterous boost in strength. I understand and thank you for trusting me enough to go through this, Lord Hokage. I will assemble my team and inform them that we will be leaving tomorrow morning. Good, that will be all, Kakashi. I know this mission is in good hands. Hiruzen said as he handed Kakashi the mission scroll. Once Kakashi had left, he slumped back into his chair and took a puff of his pipe. Minato. Kushina. Elsewhere, Sakura was in a very weird place in her life. She was on a shinobi team, but the word team might not apply. In all the missions they had completed, she had hardly participated. Most if not all the work was done by Naruto's clones, or the boys would blitz whatever task they had, so they could go train. And that's all the maniacs seemed to do. Train, train, train. Kakashi had offered her some extra training in the form of tree walking and water walking to help build her control and reserves, but she still felt she was trying for nothing. Naruto was the worst in their class, now he was a whole new person entirely. And her lovely Sasuke, who ignored anyone who passed his way, was now devoting himself to Naruto of all people. She had tried to talk to them with no luck. Sasuke continued to ignore her, usually telling her to focus on her training. Naruto on the other hand seemed to love playing with her. Whenever she would find him alone and would try to talk to him, it was almost always a clone, one that would pop as soon as she got close and shower confetti in the immediate area. Every time she would try to confront him about it, Sasuke was there. No matter what, there was no getting the former without getting through the latter. So now, she found herself walking with the other genin of her class. The rest of the teams happened to just get off from their duties and were now barraging Sakura with questions regarding her teammates. Trust me, if I knew what the hell was going on, I'd let you know. Being on this team has been the most confusing thing I've ever gone through, Sakura said, defeated. That can't be that bad, Fivehead. You're lucky enough to be on a team with Sasuke-kun. Bino still hasn't gotten over the fact that Sakura was the one who got to spend all this time with Sasuke. If you want, I'm happy to switch, it's not like he even notices me anyways, always answering Naruto-sama, Sakura answered with a mocking voice. She hated the idea of making fun of Sasuke, but it was just so frustrating that she couldn't get him to pay attention to her. Having you on our team might be even more troublesome than having Ino. No offense, Sakura, Shikamaru said, which resulted in him being smacked behind the head by his female teammate. Sakura's kinda got a point though. What the hell's going on with those two? First those weird outfits, then what you told us with Kakashi-sensei and your missions. Plus, besides Sakura, have any of you seen either one of them? Kiba asked, which received a unanimous no. It does seem strange, but what are we to do? It isn't like they're doing anything bad, are they? Chino was now getting more curious about the situation. It had crossed his mind from time to time, but this is the first time he had given it any real thought. Them maybe Naruto-kun and Sasuke just like their privacy, and is it so weird to think that they could be friends? They have both been on their own for quite a while. Hinata spoke in a docile tone. She had been spying on Naruto for years, and noticed that it got harder and harder as time went on to track him. Now it was near impossible. Sometimes, Hinata was lucky enough to happen upon him doing physical training, but usually nothing else. The Hyuga suggestion did make sense to the others. Every one of them had a family to go home to at the end of the day, but Naruto and Sasuke were greeted by empty homes. Maybe they found friendship in that similarity. Yay, you might have a point, that still doesn't explain all the other crazy stuff, Sakura said, still doing her best to try to make sense of it all. Well, you said Naruto was able to perform jutsu. Maybe Sasuke-kun taught him some because they became friends, Bino suggested. Haha, yeah right, like that idiot could learn anything Sasuke-kun would have to teach him. Sakura spat out, but then she and everyone present felt a crushing pressure fall over them. Sakura, I was very clear in my warning last time, was I not? The group heard Sasuke's voice behind them, but for the life of them, they couldn't turn around to face him. It was debilitating. Akamaru was trembling on top of Kiba's head, and with his heightened senses, he understood why. It felt as if a predator had its maw opened right, ready to swallow them whole. Sasuke, there's no need to stress, she was just joking around, right Sakura? Naruto asked, and the pressure lifted. All the other genin had broken out in a bit of a sweat, trying to catch their breath as they stared at the two. Even Hinata, who was enamored with Naruto, was scared to be in front of him. They carried themselves very differently than anyone they had met. Why yes, Naruto-kun. I was just playing around, I'm so sorry, Sasuke-kun. Sakura bowed back and forth in front of them. Kakashi called for a mission briefing, hurry to the training grounds. Sasuke coldly informed her before he and his lord continued on their way. After a couple of minutes, the group exchanged the most stressed of glances. What the absolute fuck was that? Kiba asked, boggled by the whole exchange. I told you. Sasuke calls Naruto a king and seems to be the only person he listens to. Not that, you fucking idiot. The fact that we all felt like we were about to get murdered. Bino shouted, still trying to shake off the feeling. I don't know. Sasuke's done it a couple of times, and it's always scary, and Naruto, there are times he speaks and it's like. Sakura couldn't find the words to properly explain it, but that in itself seemed to explain it all. Geez, I don't know what the hell that was. I'm not even hungry anymore. Doji nearly floored the group with that comment. Okay Sakura, maybe you weren't crazy. If anything, you should go meet your team before you have to deal with whatever the fuck that was again. They were quick to say their goodbyes as Sakura departed. This left the other 6 genins to discuss amongst themselves, but one thing was clear to them, regardless of what they might have once thought, they knew nothing of the king and his knight. Undisclosed location. Naruto and Sasuke were sparring in a grey room with glowing ceiling patterns sprawled all over its walls. King's Guard. Asura. Naruto shouted as an untold number of chains emerged from his back. They wrapped together with a crackling, grinding sound. Once the noise died down, Sasuke bore witness to 4 deep onyx arms sticking out of Naruto's back, each humming eerily, vibrating with their anxious power. Naruto then took a peculiar taijutsu stance, with each arm changing its position as well. Now Sasuke, I've been meaning to test out this little idea of mine. It is truly amazing, my lord, but there's no reason for me to follow you if you fall to me here. Mugen. Mirrored mist. Sasuke pulled his blade from its sheath at his rear. Then his free hand, a purple mist spewed purposely before transforming. The sentient smoke shifted to form a mirrored Mugen. The two then engaged each other in close combat. A flurry of slashes deflected. A barrage of punches parried. Sasuke found it incredibly difficult to get through his lord's technique. The arms were made out of chains, composed of his chakra. Their durability was insane, and now he had layered and compressed them together to a more refined form. The striking power and grip strength the arms seemed to show was no joke at all. The room was littered with craters caused by the force of their blows. Naruto similarly found himself having difficulty. Sasuke's reaction time and precision with his blades were something they both found pride in. Sasuke was Naruto's knight after all. Mugen. Field of mist. The purple mist seemed to cover the floor, and from it grew copies of Mugen. I see, then I'll respond in kind. Wind style. Windlord's great garb. Pouted Naruto. Suddenly a gust picked up, surrounding Naruto like a suit of armor. All that could be seen was a dark silhouette with glowing pearlescent eyes. Mugen. Instant mist. But some of the mist around Naruto as a result of his technique. Sasuke stretched out his hand. Blades formed from the mist, stretching towards Naruto, but were torn apart and scattered. Good effort, Sasuke. I can see you're getting into it. Naruto's chakra exploded, causing the room to shake. How could I not? These are the only times I don't have to hold back. Sometimes it hurts suppressing myself. Mugen. Mist gallery. Sasuke said as mist rose from behind him, forming a dozen Mugens. Mugen. Homing mist. With a wave of his hand, the blades flew towards Naruto. Burst wind. Naruto bounced from floor to ceiling with a gust of wind. He continued to do so all around the room as if he were a high-speed pinball, dodging all the blades chasing him. Once he was on the back wall of the room, the blonde bent down and looked at his opponent in the center of the room. He could also see the blades rocketing towards him. Wind tunnel. Naruto said as everything seemed to be pulled into the gale wrapped around him. Sasuke found himself unable to move in the strong gale, being forced to strike Mugen into the ground to stay in place. Naruto took a shoulder-charging stance now, putting the 3 arms on his right side in front. Impact wind. Naruto rocketed forward in a burst of wind, destroying all around him. The monarch slammed into the night, and both continued forward on their collision course, until crashing into the opposite wall. A massive cloud of debris was left, and from it rose Naruto, who stumbled back a bit. Damn it, Sasuke. Do you know how much it hurts getting stabbed like that? The debris cleared a bit, revealing Naruto, reverted back to normal, the sides for the several mist Mugens sticking out of him. With all due respect, Naruto-sama. Sasuke pulled himself out of the crater he was in, revealing that he was a bit beaten up, but his left arm looked completely mangled. You didn't have to be so reckless as to turn yourself into a cannonball. Seems like I got a bit carried away there. Maybe we've been here for too long. Naruto scratched the back of his head nervously. We've spent much longer in the dilation room before. Besides, what else can we do while we wait for the others to complete their missions? Sasuke asked, seemingly unfazed by his broken arm. Both of them then received the memories of the clones they had left in the village. They had a mission to escort and protect a bridge builder. Well, it seems if we ask, we shall receive. Plus, I have a good feeling that this will be a very beneficial trip for us, Naruto said cheerfully as Sasuke sighed. Sasuke's chakra seemed to cover his broken arm and then turn green. Sasuke then focused more energy specifically on his arm, which began to rapidly heal. If you say so, Naruto-sama. I just hope there's a challenge out there. It would be sad if our first official trip out of the village was uneventful. That's true, but Sasuke, you want to get rid of your damn swords. The next day, Team 7 assembled early in the morning to meet their client and go over the plan. The mission was simple. Safely transport Tazuna to the land of waves. A gray-haired, bespectacled man with a large beard and dark eyes, dressed in a sleeveless V-neck shirt with an obi, pants, and a pair of sandals, stood in front of them. He also carried a towel around his neck and wore a pointed hat on his head. Do you expect me to trust my life to this lot of children? They can't be too much older than my grandson. Tazuna made a fuss. His village scraped together as much as they could to pay for the Leaf's protection. He didn't know much of the shinobi world, but he didn't think that there was much the 3 kids could do against Gato's militia. Hey. We aren't just kids, we're shinobi. You're lucky to have us, old man. Sakura responded with the same energy. Kakashi intervened before things went south. Tazuna, you have nothing to fear. This team will be able to ensure your protection until the end of our mission. That damn sure doesn't make me feel any better and discipline your subordinates. I'm a client and she's being a rude little shit, Tazuna said, pointing at Sakura. She was about to respond, but Naruto stepped in front of Tazuna and began to speak. Sir Tazuna, first let me start by apologizing for the unprofessional conduct of my teammate and instructor, Naruto said, bowing his head in apology. I will personally be overseeing your projection, Sir Tazuna. I swear, on the Uzumaki, that no harm will come to you. Naruto extended his hand out to shake Tazuna's. The blonde did an excellent job repairing the rapport between them and their client, and though the older gentleman couldn't explain, he knew he could trust the lad in front of him. Naruto's words rang differently than that of anyone else he had interacted with within the village. I'll hold you to it, kid. The two shook hands, both with a small smile on their faces. Well, with that out of the way, let's move forward. Sir Tazuna, please remain behind me at all times. My friend Sasuke will cover your rear. Naruto gave the order, beginning to walk out of the village with Tazuna close behind. Kakashi and Sakura had accepted that these kinds of weird moments happened around Naruto after his change. They too would have followed behind immediately if they weren't stopped by a familiar pressure. You too. They heard Sasuke's voice directly behind them. You? Not. Embarrassed Naruto-sama again. The sterner his words, the harsher the pressure. Once he walked past the two and landed himself behind Tazuna, Kakashi and Sakura felt the pressure lift. The group had been walking for hours towards the land of waves, and in that time Tazuna learned to respect the blonde and black-haired boys. They were quite inquisitive, asking him all about his work as a carpenter. He explained that he had been doing carpentry since he was young, being taught by his father. He also told the boys of the various types of work he did, houses, buildings, and now the bridge. The bridge the wave was trying to build would be their land's hope of economic growth and stability. That's why that midget bastard's trying to have me killed. Without me, there is no bridge. The kid easily be heard in his voice, the burden weighing strenuously on Tazuna. Sir Tazuna, I respect the risk you're taking for your people. I assure you though, as long as we are overseeing your protection, the wave will have its bridge and its prosperity. That's as Naruto-sama says. Once he makes a proclamation, there's no need for it to be repeated. Tazuna could only look upon the boys. He could have sworn he was in the presence of nobility. Well, that's good to hear. I'll focus all my efforts on the bridge, you kids watch my back. Tazuna received nods from them both. Kakashi and Sakura followed behind the others. There had been no danger so far, so Kakashi focused on trying to dissect the interaction between the boys and Tazuna. There was nothing of note he could report back to the Hokage, though he was still hopeful that he'd be learning something new during this mission. As the team continued forward, their surroundings were enveloped in a dense mist. Naruto-sama, this mist is chakra-based. I can only think of one shinobi immediately available that could produce such a dense fog. Sasuke readied himself, placing a grip on his blade. Ah, so I was right, this trip will be fruitful indeed. What the hell are you two talking about? Tazuna was beginning to worry. Alright. Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura. Form a perimeter around the client. Their sensei's experience shined through in this moment as he quickly took control. Right, responded Sakura, but Naruto and Sasuke didn't even move. Hey. This isn't the time to freeze up, get in position. Kakashi thought they might have been spoked, being placed in a dangerous situation for the first time. Kakashi-sensei, just be quiet and watch over Sakura. Tazuna is in absolutely no danger as long as he is by my side, but I can't say the same for you too. Tazuna felt a bit more at ease after hearing the blonde's words. Naruto. Now Zen. Kakashi cut his rant short for an emergency drop, pulling Sakura down with him. Trusted reflexes saved sensei and student from being bisected by a massive spinning broadsword, sawing it through the air. As the blade continued towards the bridge builder, it suddenly stopped. All anyone could hear was a little rattling sound. Kakashi looked up to see the blade, seemingly floating in front of Naruto, Sasuke, and Tazuna. A thin, dark, snake-like silhouette near them, seemingly dancing in the mist. Kakashi-sensei, better look alive. It's gonna be hard spying on us for the old man when you've got problems of your own. Kakashi got to his feet, simply to have chains shot out from opposite ends of the tree line, wrapping around his wrist. Damn it, there's more than one enemy. I should handle this quickly. I know the plan was to hold back and see what they could do, but there are too many unknowns right now. Swift maneuvering allowed Kakashi to yank two masked combatants out of the shadows and to the center of the clearing. Damn, I didn't expect him to be able to force us out like that, Gozu. The first assailant had shoulder-length wild dark brown hair and dark eyes. He wore a rebreather that covered the lower half of his face, and a matching gauntlet to his brother's on his left arm, including a chain. He wore a camouflage suit with bandages around his waist, dark-colored knee-length sandals, and several pouches around his waist. His Kuritaker forehead protector had two horns on it. Calm down. All we have to do is hit him, then the job's done. Got it, Maizu. Mzu shouted. He had shoulder-length wild dark brown hair and dark eyes, and wore a rebreather that covered the lower half of his face. On his right arm was a large clawed gauntlet with a chain coming out of it. He also wore a camouflage suit with bandages around his waist, dark-colored, knee-length sandals, and a ragged black cape. His Kuritaker forehead protector had a single horn on it. The demon brothers then dislodged the chains from their gauntlets and charged for Kakashi, who pulled out 2 kunai to deflect their claws, clearly coated in poison. The three were engaged in close quarters combat, Kakashi quickly taking advantage in the exchange. Good, very good Kakashi-sensei. Finish up and you'll be able to watch the main event uninterrupted, Naruto shouted towards Kakashi. Then, the prince grabbed the broadsword and threw it a short distance ahead of him until it was lodged in the ground. Zabuza Mamachi, you might as well come out and face us. The surprisingly boisterous voice left the boy, echoing throughout the forest. An imposing figure began to form in the mist, its hand grabbing and pulling the blade from the ground. I never thought I'd see the day when some little shits call me out. Are you that stupid or that naive? The man in question stepped forward. He was a tall and muscular man with light gray skin, short spiky black hair, dark brown eyes. He wore bandages like a mask over the bottom half of his face and wore his forehead protector sideways on his head. His attire was a sleeveless black shirt and matching pants, complete with a waist guard, striped wrist, and leg warmers. Humming from the renowned ninja dumb enough to reveal himself within his own stealth jutsu. Maybe you're not as good as you think. The words dripped venomously from the raven-haired child. Their sensei seems to be busy with Tuchknin, and all I see is a bunch of genin. I don't think there's any need for me to worry. Now, why don't you be good little boys and let me kill the old man? If you listen, I'll make your death painless. Zabuza delivered quite the humorous threat, though he made it clear that with was still a serious one, evident by him flashing his massive blade. Azuna felt he had no place here. He was no more than a simple carpenter, desperate to see his village thrive. He presented no real threat to anyone, yet Gato thought it was necessary to send these crazy assassins after him. Sakura's reaction was similar. She looked on as her sensei proceeded to smack around the 2 armed combatants, and her teammates stood their ground against such a formidable threat. She had never heard of this Zabuza before, but she was getting used to the feeling of danger, of death looming over her. She felt she couldn't move to help anyone. She didn't even know if she could run away if she had to. Kakashi had knocked out the demon brothers and created a shadow clone to secure them. He then rushed to engage Zabuza, but was stopped and forced to jump back when a chain shot out towards his head. No need to interrupt, Haddock. Just sit there and wait your turn, that is if you get one. Sasuke and I will take care of this threat. Naruto spoke as if he was running point, but that blatant show of bravado, Kakashi saw his chance. He decided to obey. Since his first real interaction with them, they conducted themselves like professionals. They were efficient, precise, and intelligent. If they felt that there was no real threat, then maybe there wasn't. Ahaha, you kids are. Zabuza quickly jumped back, narrowly dodging a horizontal slash from Sasuke, aiming for his neck. Sasuke, do your best not to kill him. We want to see what he's got. Understood? That might be somewhat difficult. With his moves, I'm surprised he hasn't already been slain. Sasuke then took a fighting stance with the blade in hand. I believe you'll be able to get it done. You're my knight after all. That genin is fast. A second later and he might have taken my head. Zabuza felt no need for idiocy. He was able to slaughter over 100 of his peers at a young age, so it wasn't unheard of for the young of this world to be strong, as well as dangerous. Are you ready, Zabuza? Hopefully, you can present a bit of a challenge. No matter how strong, a brat was still a brat. Let's go, kid. I'm gonna rip you apart in front of your stupid little team, then I'll have them join you in hell. The larger man rushed the boy, halting once their 2 blades met. Zabuza planned to overpower the boy and cut him to ribbons, but was stunned to find that he was locked in a stalemate. He couldn't overpower a child, even though he was bigger and taller. When he looked down at this smaller opponent, he was greeted by eyes of crimson. Much to his surprise, the rogue was pushed back and bombarded by a flurry of slashes and thrusts. Zabuza managed to deflect as well as he could, but was starting to be overwhelmed by the boy. Zabuza performed a wide horizontal slash to force Sasuke to give him some space. This kid's got skill. One fuck up and I could be in some real trouble. Guess I've got to play this smart. Zabuza began towards the lake that was near the forest. He figured that with a body of water to use his jutsu, he could trick or trap Sasuke, eliminate him and proceed with a bridge builder. Where do you think you're going? Zabuza heard the boy ask as he quickly dodged another beheading attempt. Zabuza managed to make it to the lake and proceeded to run towards its center. Once there, he drastically thickened his mist, making it near impossible to see. He looked on to see Sasuke standing at the shore and surmised that the genin couldn't locate him. He then created 3 water clones and decided to send them on the attack. The boy had shown noteworthy skill and strength. Zabuza wouldn't be foolish enough to take the spout lightly. Arg, UGGHH. The screams were loud and died fast. Due to the mist, no one could see what had happened, but from the sound of the voice, they had to guess it was Zabuza. The original Zabuza was a bit concerned. He sent 2 water clones, and they took a couple of steps before being wiped out. His clones weren't weak, and even he could make out his target through the sight in this mist, so how could his opponent be able to identify the location of and deal with both his clones at the same time? Zabuza, I've lost interest in letting you showcase your abilities, at last letting you do so at your own volition. I'll have to put some pressure on you to see if you truly have worth. Sasuke's voice rang like a bell in his foe's head. Everyone had noticed that the mist had gotten thicker, now resembling a dense fog. The other noticeable change was in the shade, which went from grayish-white to a darker indigo hue, quite fitting for the feel now in the air. It was thick. Breathing felt as if one was taking in water. Sakura's legs betrayed her as she suddenly found herself flat on her rear. The Kashi heard the fall and moved close to guard her in case this was part of Zabuza's plan, but the air felt too familiar for it to be anyone else. He then lifted his headband, unleashing his Sharingan, with hopes of being able to make out anything in this fog, but to no avail. It barely makes a difference. This isn't like any jutsu that I've ever witnessed. I can tell it's chakra-based, but it's so dense it's as if it's affecting the atmosphere. The Kashi thought he was going through waterboarding resilience training for the Anbu again, but maybe that was what was helping him keep his breathing steady. Zabuza on the other hand was having a bit of difficulty. What the hell kind of jutsu is this? It's like I'm drowning. Zabuza had little time to worry as his instincts alerted him to a threat in front of him. He was quick to dodge to his right as a blade seemed to fly through the air. That you get frustrated and throw your sword br. Zabuza was interrupted as he had to jump forward from his position, avoiding being skewered from his head down by another sword. Instead of mouthing off, I suggest you focus on staying alive. Sasuke's voice sounded as if he was speaking right in Zabuza's ear. Zabuza swung his sword wildly, suspecting the boy to be in his range of attack, but he felt no contact. Is this your true nature, Zabuza? You've always been a predator, so why do you seem to slip right into the role of prey perfectly when given a chance? Sasuke observed the assassin's response. The confrontation continued, with Zabuza remaining on the defensive, dodging and deflecting whatever swords he could detect. His body had been riddled with shallow wounds. Naruto continued to guard Tazuna as he and Kurama watched the two. The Uchiha techniques and utilization have come a long way for the beginning of his training. He might be of that accursed clan, but he has more than earned the right to be your knight, my king. With that said, the showing from this demon of the mist has been quite subpar. Is he worth your consideration? I can understand why you feel that way, Kurama-san, but I think it would be fair to say that he's up against quite a difficult opponent. Sasuke might be testing him, but we both know that he tends to intensify things. They understood that both Kurama and Sasuke wouldn't allow their lord to ally himself with weaklings. They understood that one had to work for strength, and not everyone had the method they had utilized to grow stronger, but it wasn't necessarily strength or power they were on the lookout for. We can make anyone stronger. We can make anyone faster. What we can't do is instill them with drive, resolve. He might look frightened now, but he's got a goal, his purpose. He won't die here, even if Sasuke manages to kill him, and that's why he's worth it. Kurama understood her king's reasoning. They did not need the weak-willed, for they would only drag him down. He wanted those that followed him to do so with everything that had, and only someone who could put their all to their ambitions could understand. Then what shall you do about the onlooker Mamachi brought along? She seems to be able to hold her own against Uchiha's aura well enough. She might have a greater deal of focus than her partner. Naruto was intrigued. Well, Kurama-san, you've always told me never to look a gift horse in the mouth, whatever that hell that means. Their attention was pulled when they could feel a spike in Zabuza's chakra. Hein, you want to see what I've got, kid? Take this. Water style. Great waterfall. Zabuza tore through the set of hand signs, launching a massive vortex of the lake water in the direction of the clearing they had originated from. It was still hard for the others to see, but the trembling and sound of the attack was a clear indication something was coming. But showing, Zabuza, you might have worth yet. Unfortunately, I feel no need to continue this fight. I'll honor your effort with a bid on my part. Nugin. Mistwall. The fog seemed to rush in Sasuke's direction. All those back in the forest saw a massive tall barrier wall of the indigo mist in front of him, stopping whatever attack had been launched their way. When his jutsu finished, all Zabuza saw was the massive indigo wall. He had no idea what was going on, but he knew he was low on energy. He had to either retreat or focus on killing the old man. Unfortunately, he had no time to decide as his body was riddled with sharp pains throughout. Nugin. Skewers. Though he heard the call of an attack, the assailant couldn't react at all. Several blades stretched with breakneck speed from the wall, piercing him in various places on his body. Sasuke made his way to Zabuza, dispelling the mist and blades. As soon as the blade stabbing into Zabuza disappeared, he fell to his knees, using the last of his strength to prevent him from falling into the water. He looked up to once again meet eyes of crimson. I can see the king's interest in you. I suggest you take this, take your follower, and retreat for now. And quickly, before our sensei catches wind. Sasuke had a black scroll with an orange string tied around it. Zabuza had many weird experiences in his life, but this one had quickly shot up to the top of his list. He was completely dominated by some hidden leaf genin, who was now offering him a chance to run off and lick his wounds. Sasuke also seemed to notice the presence of his backup, which Zabuza started to doubt would have been able to help at all against the boy. Zabuza continued to look at Sasuke and the scroll he was holding, before reaching out and grabbing it. You've made a good choice. Call your partner and have them help you out of here. When you're alone, open the scroll. Sasuke told Zabuza, who then turned his head to the right and nodded. Suddenly, a shinobi appeared beside Zabuza, wearing a standard Kuritaker pinstriped outfit that stopped at the knees. Over this, they wore a green haori with white trimmings, and around their waist a brown sash with a fringe trail wrapped around his waist twice. The shinobi also wore a hunter nin mask, which was white with thin curved eye holes and a red wavy design in place of the mouth, as well as the Kuritaker symbol etched in the top. The new arrival bent down and helped Zabuza to his feet. You know that I could come back and you guys and the old man, right? Sasuke didn't even flinch as Zabuza delivered a final threat. He just shot him a smirk. If you return to try and kill the bridge builder, I won't be your opponent next time, it will be his majesty that you face. Zabuza could tell by the way the boy delivered his message, he got lucky this time. Zabuza-sama, we must leave now. Zabuza nodded in response, while never taking his eyes off Sasuke. Kakashi arrived at the clearing just as Zabuza and his partner used a shunshin to escape. He would have arrived sooner, but he wanted to ensure that Izuna and Sakura were safe and sound, and it seemed that Sasuke was able to handle the threat after. Kakashi noted that Sasuke seemed completely untouched. Even I don't think I could go head to head with someone like Zabuza and come out unscathed. On top of that, they were both able to handle the situation and keep me in the dark. Their vision and sensory abilities should have been disrupted by the mist, same as mine, yet they didn't have a problem both attacking and defending. But this just raises more questions, like what the hell is that mist that Sasuke seems to be able to manipulate, and what is Naruto capable of if Sasuke shows him that much respect, how much are they holding back? Kakashi decided he would have to think about that later as Naruto, Izuna, and Sakura arrived at the clearing. Sasuke then started heading towards the rest of his team. Sasuke, what happened? Kakashi asked. I was able to hold Zabuza back, but his teammate arrived, and I felt it was best not to engage in a fight at my disadvantage. They then retreated. Sasuke's answer was short and sweet. Kakashi assumed to hide how he was able to handle such an opponent. Sakura stayed in the back. She was honestly frightened. Sasuke and Naruto treated an assassination attempt like some boring class lecture. She was starting to feel like she had been thrown into a team with a pair of monsters. Izuna on the other hand was quite impressed. He didn't know how they did it or even what they did, but he was completely fine. Now that he thought about it, the enemy didn't even get too close to him. The blonde stayed by his side the whole time, and the black-haired boy pushed the threat far from him. He was starting to believe that with these two, the bridge to a new future for his home could be built. Amazing work, Sasuke. I knew I could trust you to handle the situation. To everyone else, they thought it was just the whole king and knight dynamic again, but Sasuke understood the deeper reasoning of the praise. He had assessed the value of a potential ally and delivered an invitation, while also concealing his abilities from the leaf. Thank you, Naruto-sama. Kakashi-sensei, I believe it's time to continue. Sir Izuna has an important mission himself, and as his escorts, we shouldn't hold him up. Naruto seemed to take charge of the team again. No one was hurt, nor were they tired, so Kakashi had no choice but to agree. Alright then. Team 7, onwards to the land of waves. In a hideout elsewhere, Zabuza-sama, I have finished dressing your wounds. Took you long enough, Haku. Zabuza spat out towards the now unmasked shinobi. The now identified Haku had long black hair, pale skin and large dark brown eyes, and a slender frame. Haku's long hair was gathered in a white bun holder, while 2 locks of hair fell loose framing her face, bound with metal hair cuffs at the ends. Their whole body was covered in cuts and gashes, with several somewhat deep penetration wounds. It should have taken longer, to be honest. Haku's soft smile hid a sadder tale. I still have no idea what kind of power that kid was using. That was indeed concerning. We haven't come across anyone with a proficiency in the hidden mist as you are, yet the mist he was able to produce was far denser. Haku noted from what she was able to observe while on standby, and it's like he was able to make swords out of nowhere. It frustrated Zabuza thinking back about Sasuke's weird jutsu. At the end, you launched a great waterfall jutsu, which collided into what looked like a wall made of the mist. Then, swords stretched from the wall to you. It was like nothing we had ever faced before, Zabuza-sama. I don't need a reminder, Haku. Maybe that kid has some kind of Kekkei Genkai like you. On top of that, the blonde never seemed concerned with us either. Haddock showed concern of our rival, and the girl basically pissed her pants, but those two brats. They had initially thought it was arrogance due to inexperience. That couldn't have been any further from the truth. They weren't cocky punks, they were warriors who saw no threat before them. What shall we do with the scroll you received from the black-haired boy? Haku asked with the said scroll in hand. I guess now's as good a time as any. The kid was saying something about his king and his majesty. I wonder what the hell that was about. Zabuza took the scroll and unwrapped its tying. When he peeled the scroll open, the room was suddenly filled with smoke. Haku was quick to move in front of the winded Zabuza, with senbons between her fingers. When the smoke dispersed, the two were greeted by a figure wearing a white red-lined haori with the hood up. Zabuza recognized the bright blonde hair and the headband protector around his neck. Haku quickly flung her senbons at the new arrival, surmising that this was a trick allowing the enemy to ambush them when they were down. She was surprised to see a shimmering onyx chain erupt from the Genin's back, swatting away the projectiles. It's the blonde brat. Zabuza tried to ready himself for battle, but found he was in too much pain to muster the necessary strength. Hey, why don't we relax? I'm not here to fight. I am a clone of His Majesty, Naruto Uzumaki, the last and sole heir to the kingdom of Uzushiogakure. Both of them stayed alert. They had no clue whether or not this was some kind of trick, plus that chain coming out of the clone continued to move around as if it were a serpent waiting for the chance to strike. Yuzu, what the fuck are you talking about, kid, and what the fuck do you want? Zabuza was in no mood to be toyed with. Understandably, you haven't heard of the once great Uzushiogakure, but it is His Majesty's mission to change all that. I am here merely as a messenger. My lord seeks those with the resolve necessary to change the world, whether it be through diplomacy or violence. You have gone through many hardships and faced a plethora of challenges that would have ended most men. Yet here you are, doing what you feel is necessary to accomplish your goals. You were just handed a humiliating defeat, yet you have shown no signs of deviating from the path you've chosen. The pair were stunned. Cloned or not, this kid had to be no older than 13, yet how he spoke would have easily contested that. Zabuza had been praised before. It was always before someone attempted to take his life, but he thought it was all the same, until today. This was some stranger, yet he was making such a strong impression. He could see Zabuza not for the demon he could be, but for the survivor that he was. It's also clear to His Majesty that your companion also has the resolve he seeks. The hardship and resilience that's present in your eyes. You have seen and committed your fair share of atrocities, but who among us hasn't? Just a glance in her eyes was all it took to discern her resolve. The king, His Majesty Lord Uzumaki, would like to offer you both a chance to join him as his allies in his effort to bring in a new age. He plans to rule the world, but no one man can't do it alone. Why would I want to ally myself with, let alone follow some punk genin from the leaf? That may have been a bit aggressive, but Zabuza had to ask, what was in it for them? The same way His Majesty requires allies to assist him with his goals, so too do you and your ambitions. Two people against a whole village don't seem like favorable odds, especially when you would be up against a Jinchuriki. My lord is willing to help you become stronger in more ways than one. And with that strength and our comrades, we will create an empire beside him. Zabuza's eyes almost bulged out of his head. Naruto knew of his past, his goals, and even his adversaries. I think I got the picture now. Zabuza said as he struggled to stand up. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't interested, but I refuse to follow someone I don't respect or who's weaker than me. So, if your king or whatever can best be, then he'll have my blade to use as he sees fit. Haku didn't know what was happening. She had never seen Zabuza respond to anyone like this. It may have been the calmest she had seen him, maybe more so than when they tried to kill the Mizukage. Excellent, and what about you, madam? Would you be interested in siding with His Majesty? Haku was taken back. She didn't expect to be offered an invitation. Whatever decisions Zabuza-sama makes, I will follow. The clone simply nodded. If that's all settled, when you are combat ready, seek out His Majesty, and he will be more than happy to demonstrate his strength to you. But do be warned. The clone began flexing its power, causing the room to quake. If you try to harm the man under His Majesty's protection, then he will have no choice but to exterminate you completely. Zabuza locked eyes with the clone. Its distorted voice and the look in its eyes shook even the demon of the mist. If the other kid made me feel like I was drowning, but one of this blonde brat's clones can do this, it's like I'm in a whirlpool. And you won't be able to escape it, said the clone, with an innocent grin on his face. Zabuza now understood. He was able to tell what I was thinking from a look alone. They weren't boys, brats, genin, rookies, or anything of the like. They were shinobi with a mission. They used deception, espionage, investigation, and were more than strong enough to handle when they had to get their hands dirty. The fight with the black-haired one was only a showing. They wanted those they were looking to recruit to understand that they weren't your average Zabuza took a look at Haku, who was able to hold her composure better than him, but he could tell that she had come to a similar conclusion. Well, it seems like my work here is done. I'll relay your response to my lord. You two have a wonderful rest of your evening. Oh, and we can't wait to have you work with us. Before dispelling, the clone's face adopted a terrifying grin. Zabuza-sama, Haku. I don't need a reminder. Land of Waves. Team 7 had safely arrived at Tazuna's home in the Land of Waves. Besides the assassination attempt by Zabuza and co., the trip to the wave was rather peaceful. They had arrived in the late morning, entering the home to see a woman cooking. She had long blue hair and was wearing a short-sleeved pink shirt with the end of the sleeves and the collar being red. She also wears a long blue skirt. My dear Tsunami, I'm home. Dad. Tazuna's daughter, Tsunami, ran to give her father a massive hug. She had been terrified that Gato and his men had been successful in killing her father, but was more than happy to find out she was wrong. It's all right, my dear, I'm so sorry to have worried you. It's a father's job to ease the worries of their children, not add on to them. Tazuna held his daughter as she shed a few tears. That's not your fault, Dad. I'm just glad you're home safe. Tsunami broke off the hug to wipe her face and straighten up. Gosh, I'm sorry for that. My name is Tsunami. Thank you so very much for protecting my father. Tsunami quickly gathered herself and bowed in appreciation for the fine job the team had done. Before anyone could respond to her, Tazuna threw his arms around both Naruto and Sasuke, to Sasuke's displeasure. Yep. These two right here got me back without a single scratch. Gato sent a couple of tough customers, but these two sent them packin'. With them here to protect me, I'm sure we could build the best bridge ever. Tsunami couldn't remember the last time she had seen her father this excited or this hopeful. They had gone through their fair share of hardships, and it had taken its toll on both their ability to hope, but it seemed that these boys might have helped with that. Lady Tsunami, there is no need for you to thank us. We are simply doing our job. That, and it's been an absolute pleasure escorting and getting to know your father. He's told us much about his life, his work, and his home. Yet, I failed to see how he forgot to mention how beautiful his daughter was. The look Naruto gave Tsunami, along with the kind compliment, had her blushing up a storm. Thank you for your kind words, Shinobi-san, but I don't even know your names. Tsunami tried to change the subject. It had been a while since she received a compliment for her appearance, so it was understood she was a bit flustered. I apologize for our rudeness. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. The gentleman under your father's other armpit is Sasuke-Uchiha. The Uchiha simply bowed as much as he could as the old man just wouldn't let go. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you, Naruto-san, Sasuke-san. What about the other two at the door? Tsunami asked as she saw a silver-haired man and a pink-haired girl. Oh, yay, that's just the rest of our team, Naruto said apathetically. Tsunami thought it was strange, but her father was home safe and if she was being honest, that's all that mattered to her. Kakashi, however, was annoyed by Naruto's statement. He was their Jonin sensei, one with probably the most impressive resume out of all the sensei the Leaf had to offer. His team should be grateful to have someone of his skill helping them grow as shinobi. They knew that the boys were stronger than they let on, but there was no way that they were so strong that they could continuously disrespect him without a single concern for the consequences. My name is Kakashi Haddock. This is Sakura. I am the sensei and leader of this team. Kakashi made a point to emphasize his role. There was a moment of awkward silence after this, but Tsunami helped break the tension. You all must be quite tired from your trip. I'll make some more breakfast to restore your energy. Thank you very much, Lady Tsunami, but Sasuke and I will have to pass at this time. Naruto, it's rude to refuse such a kind offer. I never took you for that type. Kakashi thought it was his turn to try to get under the boy's skin. Maybe he would show more of his true personality instead of whatever facade he had going on. I apologize to Lady Tsunami. I don't mean to come off as rude at all. My concern is that we are in the land controlled by the man who wants your father dead. It would be foolish not to set up a perimeter and scout for any potential threats and danger. If the enemy knows we have arrived, they could be preparing an assassination attempt right now. Naruto's answer was ironclad, much to Kakashi's displeasure. He was supposed to be a shinobi renowned for his skill and intellect, yet Naruto was here making him look like a novice. He seemed to have the leadership position usurped from under him yet again by the blonde. He had tried to make him look bad, but just seemed to give Naruto another chance to make him look like a fool. Please don't apologize, Naruto-san. It's quite comforting to know my father's protection is in the hands of such dedicated bodyguards. Kakashi noticed the weird look the woman shot at him after Naruto's response. It might have been quick, but he noticed it. It was as if she was asking him, are you sure you're the leader? Suddenly, 3 smokeless shadow clones came to be next to Naruto. These clones will be securing and guarding the house, while Sasuke and I will go and scout the area. Naruto then reached into his Haori and pulled out a map of the wave, much to Kakashi's surprise. I'll also need you to mark the building side of the bridge. I want to make sure that area is secure and would like for us to establish the safest route from your home to the site. Azuna marked the location on the map, and the two boys turned to head out and complete their tasks, but they were stopped by Kakashi. Team 7, meet me outside for a team meeting. Kakashi gestured for the boys to walk past him and moved from the doorway. Once they and Sakura step outside, Kakashi closes the door to Tazuna's home and leads the team a little further away to prevent eavesdropping by their clients. I have no idea what the two of you are hiding, but we are on a mission. I am Yujinin Sensei, meaning I am your superior and commanding officer. You do not question my command and you sure as hell don't give orders. Kakashi was stern, even pushing some killing intent to try and intimidate them. That you always respect your sensei, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi was stunned and could do nothing but look on at Naruto. Why would you ask me that, Naruto? Even Sakura could tell that Naruto had gotten to Kakashi, she just couldn't tell why. I think you're being a bit hard on us. We are just giving you the respect that you've earned the same way your sensei earned yours. Naruto's face held a smile. Kakashi could have sworn he was standing in front of his sensei yet again, but the feeling faded as Naruto said, one must earn the respect of others through their actions and character. So I have to ask, are you worthy of respect? Are you deserving like your sensei was? Kakashi didn't know what to make of this. He couldn't tell if Naruto was simply trying to irritate him or if his comment had a deeper meaning. It wasn't a secret that Kakashi was the last student of the 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze, but the fact that Naruto was Minato's heir was. All this did was raise more questions for Kakashi. I see you seem to be having difficulty answering the question. No matter, I'm sure you'll see the answer for yourself, Naruto said as he and Sasuke turned once again to leave. Naruto. Sasuke. You Willis. The boys seemed to have left using the shunshin. Kakashi-sensei, what should we do now? Sakura asked sheepishly. She could feel the tension rising between her teammates and their sensei. She didn't know how to help, but she couldn't stand the fact that she might end up useless once again. They will be able to handle themselves. The best thing we can do is wait for their return and report. For now, I'll focus on getting you stronger with a bit of personal training. We will start with the tree climbing technique and move on from there. Kakashi didn't want to allow the boys to do what they pleased, though he didn't have much of a choice, so instead of complaining, he figured he might as well use the free time constructively. Elsewhere, Naruto and Sasuke had been surveying the land they found themselves in. To say that the wave was struggling would have been an understatement. Children were littering the street, but not in a whimsical sense. No child was running around, playing, or laughing as one would expect. The children laid on the ground, covered in filth. Some looked incredibly skinny to the point that one could see their skeleton or veins on these children. Some were out trying to steal or offer a service for food or money. There were even a couple of dead bodies lying around that no one seemed to notice. The people, the village, the land itself all seemed like it was dying. It said Sasuke. There should be no reason these people are suffering the way they are. This Geto is draining the life out of this once great land. It is tragic, Naruto-sama. Though this would be a great opportunity to strengthen and expand the empire. That's always work with you, isn't it, Sasuke? The knight's job never ends, not even after death. Naruto wished Sasuke wouldn't take everything so seriously all the time. You're correct though. The wave will make a fine addition to the empire. With all the amazing resources here, our science division will have a field day. The two continued through the town, noticing there were a good number of mercenaries roaming around. They figured that they were part of the militia Geto had assembled to control the land by fear. They had witnessed the mercs harass and bully wave citizens. Not a single person stood up for themselves. It seemed they just didn't have any fight left. Sure, they could have easily handled all the hired thugs they had come across, but that was not their mission, nor was it in their best interest. Naruto had grown and learned much about the world, especially the cruelty of it. What he wanted to do was on a grander scale than stopping a greedy businessman from destroying a town. Naruto would have to ignore their blight for now, but he knew that they would thrive in the end, and they would thank their king for it. Naruto and Sasuke had continued to the small mining area of the island. Due to Geto's rule, trading became limited, therefore there was hardly any need to mine, leaving them abandoned. They entered and continued down the mine shaft for a couple of minutes until Naruto signaled for them to stop. This should be good enough. First, let's set up the barrier. 4 Naruto clones appeared, 2 moving a bit further down the shaft, while 2 moved back towards the way they came. The clones took a rectangle formation and began to run through several hand signs. Sealing jutsu. Full concealment barrier. The clones placed their palms on the ground as a sealing array appeared. Each array shot a single line that connected, forming a rectangle on the ground. Transparent walls of light begin to form until a rectangular barrier surrounds the two. From the inside, it seemed as if nothing changed. One couldn't even tell they were in a barrier unless they were really looking. On the outside of the barrier, one couldn't tell there was anyone there. Naruto had designed this barrier during his sealing studies and was incredibly proud. It would refract light and limit sound on the inside, so no one could see or hear anything from the exterior. Now to set up the gate. Naruto then reached into his Haori and pulled out a scroll. He opened and rolled the scroll out on the floor. The scroll appeared to be blank until Naruto started to pour a large amount of chakra into it, revealing a ceiling complex-looking ceiling array. Ceiling Jutsu. God's Gate. As Naruto called its name, a black-colored torii gate rose from the scroll. When it finished, it stood at 8 feet tall, with its opening resembling a slowly moving azure whirlpool. Are you sure they'll be able to open their side of the gate? From my understanding, it takes a good deal of chakra. The test showed that it should work fine. Both sides of the gate are connected by the same matrix, so the chakra I put into it should allow for both sides to be open. Besides, Malice-san is more than powerful enough to open the gate on her own, so I doubt they'll have any trouble. The two noticed that a red variant of the Leaf Standard Ambu blade gently fell out the gate. That's Kagura's blade. That means the gate was a success. Sasuke walked up and picked up the blade. Of course it was. It's a Naruto Uzumaki original, meaning it's a jutsu built for a king. Naruto crossed his arms and stood with pride at the success of his jutsu. He had been trying to replicate his father's legendary technique, but found that though it was difficult for him, it didn't fit the way he did combat. He couldn't ignore the potential of what may be the most powerful space-time jutsu their world had ever known, so he did what he always did when he found things difficult, go back to the basics. He was a king and believed that there was a chance that, like before, his kingdom might one day come under attack from a powerful and vast enemy power. He would need the strength to protect his realm. Naruto strived to make his space-time techniques more defense and utility-oriented, and was proud of the fruits of his labors, this one being a space gate that would allow one to traverse any amount of distance between the two entry points. I'll send a chain, so they know it's safe. Knowing them, they would still be a bit hesitant. Naruto sent a chain out which grabbed the blade for Sasuke. It then went towards and passed through the gate. He felt the blade was taken from his chain, so Naruto recalled it. Along with it out the gate came 3 people. The first one was an impeccable beauty, a woman with lustrous medium jet black hair and the face of a goddess. She had light yellow-orange eyes and 2 silver hairpins tied on the back of her hair, with a fringe of her hair covering her right eye. She wore a black kimono with a white sash, black fingerless gloves, a white jacket with a higher collar and blue rose printed textures, black leg warmers, gray shinobi sandals, and a black forehead protector with a Uzumaki swirl around her neck. The second one could be described as an elegant snow-white skinned beauty with hair to match. She wore a revealing red outfit, showing her midriff, arms, and legs with her white hair tied back by a multicolored rope with bells attached to it. When she entered the area, she had a white kitsune mask with red marking on it, including an Uzumaki swirl in the center of the forehead. She removed the mask, revealing her ice blue eyes and enchanting face. She had multiple tattoos that resemble flower petals on the left side of her face and midriff, as well as her left leg. To finish off her outfit were her red high-heeled sandals and the red ambu blade sheathed on her left leg. Lastly was a hulking giant of a man, with spiky red-orange hair, well-pronounced cheekbones, and his eyes of gray. He wore a sleeveless blue shirt that tucked into his dark gray pants, which, in turn, are tucked into military-style boots. His pants were held up by a red belt with a buckle engraved with a Uzumaki swirl, which matched a strap going across his chest from his right shoulder to under his left arm. This strap held 2 large cannons to his back. The man was holding a large metal chest in his left hand, and he had a metal band embedded a bit of his forearm. The 3 new arrivals stepped in front of and bowed to Naruto. "Greeting, my lord," said the large man. "Greetings, Naruto-sama," came from a white-haired woman. "Greetings, Lord Naruto." The black-haired woman was the last one to greet him. "Bando, Kagura, Malice-san, please rise. I'm glad you were all able to make it. It has been some time since we have been able to see each other." Naruto named the individuals in the order they greeted him. "Greetings to you as well, Lord Ichiya," spoke to the woman now identified as Malice. "Greetings to you too, Malice-sensei, Kagura, Bando." It was a rare sight to see Sasuke behaving cordially with others, but these 3 were comrades that Naruto and Sasuke had made among their journeys outside the Leaf. The 3 were shinobi who had encountered the cruelty of the world in some way. Malice Rinha was an incredibly powerful shinobi from the Rinha clan, which possessed incredibly powerful and potent medical ninjutsu. The clan also had an incredibly powerful and rare Kekkei Genkai, which allowed them to absorb a person's chakra and duplicate their appearance and memories, of which she was the most powerful practitioner. Due to the immense power she and her clan held, much like the Uzumaki, the Rinha were targeted. The Rinha hide their secrets well, so well in fact that they had to be taken to their graves. The attacks against the Rinha led to their annihilation, except for Malice and her only son, Yudo. Malice had taken her son and went into hiding, in the hopes of protecting him. Unfortunately, fate had other plans for the two. The deadly virus began to spread through the world, and the 5 Cage at the time felt it best to look for a solution in the way of the Rinha clan. With rumors of survivors of the attacks, they put their best in sniffing them out. One unfortunate night, a group of hunter nin was successful in finding their hiding place at the time and had alerted the cage. They had orders to capture them alive and moved in to do so, but Malice was alerted and a battle ensued. During the bout, a hunter nin was successful in capturing and escaping with Malice's son, Yudo. During the moment she noticed Yudo had been captured, she was distracted long enough for several of the hunters to land several severe wounds on her. But the last of her strength, Malice was able to use her of style Adlian technique to create a sinkhole-like effect with her at the center, which was able to drag in and bury the remaining assailants, killing them. With no more remaining strength and blood loss from several wounds, Malice fell unconscious. She soon awoke and retreated to the first place she could find to lick her wounds and prepare to rescue her son. With her medical prowess and ninjutsu, it didn't take long for her to recover, but by the time she was ready to save Yudo, she had learned that it was already too late. They had experimented on Yudo, believing that he might hold some hidden secrets that would allow them to combat the virus, and unfortunately for him, their assumption was right. For some reason, Yudo was immune to the virus, and the medics were able to use Yudo's DNA to create a vaccine, but this ultimately cost Yudo his life. Her husband was killed along with the rest of her clan. Her child was ripped from her in the dead of night for a superficial reason such as protecting the many. She knew they tore her away from her son out of fear. Fear of her strength. Fear of their mortality. She then began to dedicate her life to make all their fears come true. That was until she came across the pair of Naruto and Sasuke. They were children, no older than 9 years old at the time, walking without a care in the world in the forest of the land of hot water. Malice had found herself there, developing new arts before taking her revenge against the cage, but was surprised to find these two wandering around. Whether it was her motherly intuition or just curiosity, she decided to approach the boys, but she found herself in a taijutsu exchange with Sasuke. She came out on top after a strenuous round of fighting, though she found herself pretty wiped afterward. Malice was confused when Naruto told Sasuke that there was no need to attack her in the first place, if the chains didn't. After an impressively formal and regal apology, Naruto introduced himself and Sasuke and offered her their services as a means of atonement for Sasuke's actions. As confused as she was oddly relaxed and joked that they could repay her by supplying her with something to eat. Naruto then pulled out a scroll from seemingly nowhere, unraveled it, and used it to summon a box, which opened to reveal some of the finest beef she'd ever seen. There were several different circle seal matrices on the scroll, and Naruto used them to summon boxes of vegetables and rice, seasonings, and even one that had cooking utensils, bowls, and pans. Naruto made a fire and quickly made a delicious beef stir-fry for Malice, and had even managed to make a couple of rice balls, which she noticed Sasuke thoroughly enjoyed. When Malice had asked them what they were doing out in the forest, Naruto just stared deeply into her eyes. She found herself unable to break eye contact with him for what seemed like hours. After a couple of minutes, Naruto blinked and adopted a smile on her face that tugged at Malice's heart. It resembled Yudo's smile. Naruto then told her his whole story, Kyuubi and all. Sasuke followed suit with his tale, with Naruto wrapping up by informing her that they were on their way to his ancestral home, Uzushiogakure. There, they would see if there was anything they could use in their journey to create an empire and take on the world, and the hand it dealt them. Malice sympathized with the boy's cause, and while she was still grieving the loss of all she had known, she felt like she had to help these boys. Naruto told her he was a king by birth, an emperor who had his throne stolen from him. He was hindered and abandoned out of the fear of the beast he could become, and now here he was, a child in a killer's world already fighting to make his dreams a reality. Sasuke was left in the dark of all the goings-on around him, which resulted in him being left scarred and alone. The home which his brother had sacrificed his freedom and clan for, left Sasuke alone. He was treated as if he was some glorified object. The leaders and elite of the village referred to him as the last Uchiha and Uchiha prodigy, trying to mold him into a skill tool they could use simply like they used his brother Itachi. Malice told the boys that she was a strong and somewhat feared missing nin, and that she would be happy to train them in a bit of what she knew, which the boys quickly accepted, informing her that they had only trained on their own. She traveled with them to Uzushiogakure and trained on the way, and was surprised to find that they were incredibly powerful, and a bit more skilled than anyone their age should be. Their physical abilities alone were terrifying from what she witnessed. Along the way, she informed the boys of her story, feeling they were mature enough to understand. That gesture of trust pushed Naruto to reveal to her the Uzumaki chakra application and the Uzumaki time dilation field. Once they arrived at Uzushiogakure, they began their training and bonding, with Malice becoming a mother figure sensei to boys, and them becoming her adopted children. She imbued in them all the Rinha arts which the two took to quite well. Sasuke found he was able to use several of the advanced techniques to further his combat ability, and Naruto helped Malice in creating a medical jutsu that could contend with any created by legendary medical nin, Tsunade. As time went on, Malice's desire became to see this new empire come to fruition, for she wanted to see it topple the world that took her world from her. She came to understand what she had lost was gone, but she now had the power and the drive to create a new world where her boys could never be taken away from her. Naruto and Sasuke came across Kagura about a year after meeting Malice. The two of them were training through real-life experiences. Malice suggested that the two of them hunt down entries on the bingo book to help hone their skills and help collect funds for their ambitions. They had captured and killed several of the bounties in the bingo book, and luckily for them, they happened to be around the bounty collection office in the Land of Fire, close to the border of the Land of Tea. The boys had been using the henge to hide their identities, and after collecting the bounties of their captures, they were headed back to Uzushiogakure. The plan was to report to Malice, give her the funds they collected, go back to the leaf for a period, and replace the numerous clones they had left to cover for them. Once they confirmed that everything in the village was normal and that there was no suspension of anything going on, they would head back out of the village to continue on their mission towards building their empire. Before they could make it back, they came across Kagura wearing her kitsune mask surrounded by a group of leaf Anbu. She quickly performed some hand signs as some of the Anbu went to attack her. As the first attack was about to land, they stopped, turned, and began attacking their Anbu allies. In a few minutes, the group of Anbu was fighting amongst themselves, half of them pleading for their comrades to stop and come to their senses, but to no avail. By the end, the bodies of the Anbu littered the forest floor. There was only one survivor whose throat was quickly slited by Kagura. Believing that the onlookers were backup, Kagura went on the attack. They fired off several of her knives with her chakra strings attached, making the knives move irregularly towards their target. As the knives closed in, Naruto's King's Guard sprang to life, stopping the attack by deflecting the knives and severing Kagura's strings, much to her surprise. King's Guard then went and restrained Kagura, wrapping around her and quickly siphoning her energy. The boys approached the Kinmochi and using one of his chains, Naruto removed her mask, revealing her beauty. The two boys interrogated her, asking for her reasons for attacking them and why she was being hunted by the leaf, but found that she was a resilient one. Naruto used his chains to make her kneel. He then dropped his henge, revealing to her that he was just a 10-year-old boy. Now that both were at eye level, Naruto stared into her eyes and after a couple of minutes, asked her of the wrong the leaf had committed onto her. Kagura couldn't explain it then, but after joining their mission, she explained it as Naruto's majestic charisma that got her to reveal her past to them. She told them of how she was an orphan of the leaf, one with an immense talent for ninjutsu that could rival Hiruzen Sarutobi, the professor of shinobi. She was skilled in all manner of chakra control and manipulation, and quickly learned as many jutsu as she could, even those deemed forbidden. Kagura's growth was quick, and her strength couldn't be ignored, earning her a spot amongst the Anbu at 10. With the privileges granted to her with a rank, she dived into ninjutsu theory, using her intellect to help her break down, reconstruct and improve her application of it. She took techniques like the chakra strings, and improved on them heavily for a variety of uses, and was able to even improve upon the forbidden jinjutsu, Salbane, which would cause its victim to treat everyone around them as enemies. They saw the power of the jinjutsu as it dealt with the Anbu in a very efficient manner. She believed that she would be able to continue strengthening and improving upon herself till she was a worthy candidate for Hokage, but when she turned 13, she was betrayed. Kagura was a powerful kunoichi, capable of taking on the elite of the elite, but she was also a loner, unable to form any solid bonds within the village. No one truly knew her, and for those that did know who she was, it was more so that they knew what she was capable of. She was an enigma, one that was gaining power too quickly for the liking of those in charge. One night, on her return from a solo mission to deal with a band of bandits, she was ambushed by several dark-clad individuals, wearing white masks with void eye holes. After fighting for a while and killing a few of her assailants, she was pinned down by the remaining -1 of them, who tried to place a strange-looking ceiling tag on her. Luckily, during her skirmish she was able to use her chakra strings to set up an original technique she dubbed string theory. Recall retaliation, which recalled the string and the knives she had attached to their ends at high speeds. With the opponent focused on her, they wouldn't notice the blade-tip strings coming from their rear. But the quick maneuver of her strings, she was able to strike the throats of her captives, successfully killing all but one, who was too wounded to continue their assault. She unmasked a wounded attacker, showing it was one of her former Anbu teammates, and continued to unmask the rest, revealing that they were all former Anbu. Using the psycho mind transmission on the last assailant alive, Kagura saw memories of them watching her constantly and reporting back to a figure that always seemed shadowed out. She dived deeper until she was able to find a memory of the team, reporting that she had just finished her mission and was returning. The shadowy figure seemed to be sitting and wearing a hat of some kind. The figure asked if they believed that she would be useful to them, to which they answered that they believed she would, but she would most likely need to be forced. The figure seemed to become a smidge clearer, revealing the individual to be elderly. The figure then ordered them to test her and take her if Kagura proved worthy. In the end, she was forced to cut her jutsu due to the ninja succumbing to his injuries, but she was sure that the person who had ordered this attack was the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. She didn't have a moment to rest as from the treetops, more of what she believed to be her Anbu brethren descended upon her. With the last of her strength, she utilized the Salbane to turn a few of her attackers against each other and fled to lick her wounds. After some time, she learned that she had been deemed a traitor who in the pursuit of forbidden jutsu, killed her fellow shinobi and fled the village, becoming a missing nin that the leaf had been sending hunter nin and elites to end. She wasn't dumb enough to believe that these kids were ordinary, and from the physical features of Sasuke, Kagura could tell he was in a che. They were of the same village after all, and she had seen many in her time as a leaf shinobi. She deduced that these boys had to be of the leaf of that fact and Naruto's earlier question, but she was still left with the question of how the boy was so insightful. Naruto and Sasuke sympathized with her, and much like with Malice, they told her of their tale, which also served the purpose in filling in some gaps she had in the history of the village since she had left. Kagura knew of the Kyuubi attack, the loss of the fourth Hokage, and the reinstating of the third. She had also heard of the tragedy of the Uchiha massacre, which left a young boy and his wayward murderous older brother as the last of their clan. She was more than shocked to learn that Naruto was the heir of two clans, one of which was envied and targeted for their strength. She was also surprised to learn that the village had used Itachi to stop a coup that the Uchiha had planned, damning him to a life of a criminal and his brother to a life with no family. Naruto then released her from his chains. They all seemed to understand that they were not enemies. If anything, they were kindred spirits. These boys were like her, young but ambitious, setting out to make their way in this world, regardless of the troubles they had faced. Naruto then offered her a place in his kingdom, noting many of her valuable traits, such as her analytical mind and her skillful application of chakra. They even suggested that Kagura would be able to help him advance his ability as they had similarities. Naruto also promised Kagura that by following him, she would become the leader she once aspired to be, of a force far superior to anything the Leaf and the rest of the shinobi world. She believed in the potential these boys showed, and for the first time in her life she felt a kinship to people, so she decided to join their cause, learning from and growing alongside each other. Their meeting with Bando was a bit different. The four of them had ventured and recruited more members to their cause a year after Kagura's recruitment. From research and rumor, they believed that the ruins of Soragakure village hidden in the sky, located in the land of sky, held a bounty of useful resources, and decided to make the journey. On the way, they had come across Bando unconscious, gravely wounded and missing his left hand, which looked to have been cut from his forearm. Malice was able to stabilize the man with minimal effort, enough for him to come to and answer their questions. Seeing as the strangers took the time to help him, especially in the condition he was in, Bando decided to tell them his story. Bando was the child of two former scientists from the old days of Soragakure, a village that even in the past was vastly superior to the rest of the ninja world in regard to technology. They had also developed ninjutsu that allowed for airborne battle. The old regime of the village decided to make their place known in the world during the Second Shinobi World War, but was ultimately defeated and destroyed by the Leaf at the end of the war. This left the world with the impression that Soragakure had been eliminated, much like with the Uzumaki. What was left of the old regime quickly took control of the survivors and began to rebuild the village and their power to one day gain revenge. Bando's parents died as a result of the war, but he dedicated himself to the world of science in honor of his parents and to make a way to defend those he cared about from facing an untimely fate. Bando proved to be a scientific mind of great prowess. It was as if technology or maybe science itself liked him. Unfortunately for Bando, his discoveries and inventions were sold and used to increase the village's strength and funds, while under the guise of being wiped out. Bando had recently found out that the village leaders had been doing business with the likes of what he deemed monsters. Among those were the Mizukage and his bloodline hunters, who mercilessly slaughtered anyone possessing a Kekkei Genkai, and the infamous Orochimaru, who had been kidnapping and experimenting on people throughout the shinobi world. Bando even learned that they had sold several of their citizens as guinea pigs for Orochimaru's nefarious purposes. Bando was upset that his science and his people were being used to harm the innocent, and was furious that it was the leaders of his people who were treating them as expendable tools to further their twisted need for revenge. Bando had spent his years honing not only his scientific mind, but his physical body and shinobi skills, and created a fighting style allowing him to capitalize on his inventions. Feeling he had no other choice, Bando loaded up what he needed and went to attack the leaders of his village, in hopes of ending their tyrannical reign and mistreatment of his war-torn people. Bando was successful in getting through most of the guards without fatally hurting them, but found himself swiftly defeated by the current leader of their village, Shin. After beating on a defeated Bando, Shin explained that with Orochimaru's help, he was able to develop a seal that allowed him to passively absorb nature chakra and use it to fuel and strengthen his immensely powerful body revival technique. Using the jutsu, Shin went from an elderly man with long gray hair and yellow eyes to a muscle-bound behemoth. His hair and beard grew wild and much longer, as well as blackening in color. Shin's muscles greatly expanded, which caused his clothes on his upper body to burst, leaving him bare-chested, with only shreds of the sleeve around his wrists. All this made him look younger and much more physically fit. Shin gloated that he was now the ultimate weapon, demonstrating his power by being able to sever Bando's left hand with a single chop of his hand, grabbing and crushing the now severed appendage being repaired. He had guards dump Bando somewhere in the forest and let the wildlife finish him off. Naruto was furious. Whoever Shin was, he was a leader, and that meant a lot to Naruto. The people of this land, whether they wanted to or not, had put their trust and faith in the old man to lead them to a more prosperous future. Yet, they were being sold off so some psycho could have a shot at revenge against a bunch of innocent people. Naruto told Bando that he would take it upon himself to deal with Shin and the old regime, but in exchange, Naruto wanted Bando to become one of his scientists, to develop new technology for his up-and-coming empire. Bando thought the kid was insane, yet he did have two Kenwaichis with him, and even Bando could tell they were immensely strong. He didn't know what to do, but when Naruto stepped up to him with that warm smile and his left hand extended for a handshake, Bando felt he couldn't refuse. Bando agreed, but to the condition that no matter what, his science was not to be used against the innocent for nefarious purposes, which everyone was able to agree upon. The group had been led to the village by Bando, but there were guards at the entrance. Naruto then turned to his followers and informed them that he would be handling this himself, much to Bando's surprise. Naruto walked up to the entrance, to which the guards questioned who he was. When they received no answer, they went on the attack, but were quickly dealt with when Onyx chains shot out of the men wrapped around the guards' necks, slowly suffocating them until they lost consciousness. Naruto then turned to Bando and promised he wouldn't kill any of his people, besides Shin. Naruto dealt with the resistance they had met on their way to finally come face to face with Shin. The two had a heated exchange about what it meant to be a leader, a king. Naruto spoke of it as a privilege, regardless of how one becomes a leader, which Shin believed that all those governed were simply expandable for the desires of the one governing. Naruto's words resonated with Bando, and the effort Naruto had put into helping him and his people. Bando felt that if anyone deserved to be called king, it was someone who believed what it meant, someone like Naruto. Naruto and Shin began their skirmish with Shin using his body revival technique. Shin planned on using his impressive spread to try and blitz Naruto, but found himself flying several meters back as Naruto outspeed and kneed the man in his face. Shin corrected himself and stood once more to find the boy holding a rather large shuriken that was about the size of a wheel and had the shape of a common fictional 5-point star. It was largely a shimmering onyx in color, but had 3 dark grooves along one side of each point, the other sides having a dark gray edge. 2 red dots could be seen in the middle of the weapon above the shuriken's central hole, resembling a face. The shuriken started to glow with a brilliant green aura, then Naruto let go of the shuriken, as if he were dropping it on the ground, but instead it started to float in front of him and began spinning. It spun faster and faster until it resembled a glowing green buzzsaw. Shin mocked that with his enhanced durability and regeneration, no weapon or attack in the boy's arsenal would be able to defeat him, or even do him harm. Naruto stretched his right hand forward and called out Wind Style. Windlord's execution wheel. The weapon, having received orders for its lord, flew forth to do his bidding. All Shin could hear was a loud screeching followed by a sharp pain in his left arm. When he looked down, he found that it had been cut through by the boy's attack at the forearm, and when he looked back at Naruto, the boy held his missing appendage in his hand. Naruto told Shin that there was no escape for him, for when the king sentences one to death there is no escape. Shin's arm regenerated rather quickly, and he felt he was still superior in the fight, but found himself on the defensive the whole time. Naruto didn't even move after he sent his shuriken after the man. Shin ran, dodged, and ducked, but was unable to avoid the deadly spinning wind blade. He had most of his limbs severed and regenerated several times, and regardless of how strong his medical ninjutsu was, he still felt pain, and he was in a crazy amount of it. In a last-ditch effort to defeat Naruto and his death wheel, Shin released the 8 gates, but still found himself dodging the shuriken attack. Shin took a look at Naruto, and was worried as he saw a bunch of onyx chains erupted from Naruto's right forearm, wrapping around it to form a cannon barrel-like structure. Then, Shin heard a screeching sound that was so loud it was almost debilitating. It took all his focus to jump over the shuriken avoiding being bisected, but he couldn't dodge Naruto's next attack while midair. Wind Style. Spiraling Eraser was the last thing Shin heard as Naruto armed and unleashed a spiraling stream of dense wind chakra that completely engulfed Shin's body and continued through the ceiling of the room they were in. When the attack finished, there was nothing left but a clean carved perfect circle in the ceiling. But Shin dead, Naruto and crew dealt with the remaining resistance. Bando took the helm as temporary leader for his people, informing them of the crimes their former leadership had committed and how Naruto had been their savior and liberator. Many were skeptical, and rightfully so, since he was still a child of 11 or 12, but Bando received the surveillance footage from the room they had fought in, revealing that Naruto had indeed defeated Shin, and rather easily. Naruto delivered a speech to the people informing them of his plan to create a new home for him and those who would recognize them as their king. He asked the people for time to earn their respect and recognition, and with the help of his allies, spent weeks providing medical attention, food, and other necessities they had been deprived of. In time, the people saw Naruto for his actions, not his age, and decided that he and Bando had done more than enough to be recognized as the leaders they were. Naruto shared the basics of the Uzumaki chakra techniques to help strengthen the new lot of shinobi that joined their ranks, as well as setting up the proper training areas that would help them take their training to heights untold. Malice started training the medics, and Kagura focused on the elites. Kagura was going to make an elite force that would be able to completely devour the Anbu or any village equivalent. Bando headed their technological division, focusing on making his king's empire one with no equal. He also was in charge of arms dealing, which was also a way to recruit interesting individuals. They were all from different walks of life, but they had assembled for the same reason, to make a new world for them and theirs, and destroy anyone who would threaten that. Now they were all here in the wave, taking another step towards their goal, and adding to the glorious Uzumaki Empire. I'm glad to see you're all doing well, and you all seem to have gotten a great deal stronger. Naruto loved to praise his allies, and was more than happy to see them grow. We have all been training hard, and with many obtaining Hatsu, it's only helped push development further. I'm sure you'll be very pleased with the results, my lord. Bando answered. The SHIN' and Abyss have also made amazing strides. They have been performing out in the field with a 100% success rate. The guru was impressed by the elite task force's performance. Through her strict command and rigorous training, she believed that there was no group out there that would outperform the Shinin. The D and RYK current have also improved immensely. The degree of their medical techniques and knowledge will make them essential in the field. They truly embody the term battle medic. Malice was happy to know that the arts of her clan would yet again be used to protect those she cared for. This is indeed good news, Naruto-sama. The sooner our preparations are complete, the sooner we can end these shenanigans, Sasuke said, hoping that their days dealing with Elif were coming to an end sooner rather than later. Yes, this is great, and to be honest, I agree with you, Sasuke. I knew being genin would be tedious, but between the foolish missions and our foolish instructor, my patience is beginning to wear thin. Naruto couldn't hold his annoyance any longer. But that being said, let's get down to business. As you know, from my clone that delivered the scroll to you, we have been tasked to protect a bridge builder from a money-hungry tyrant, using a militia to control the land. While Sasuke and I continue with our mission, you three will take out Gato and collect everything he's got. We will give the wave what it needs to rebuild and thrive, and then they will join us. Naruto was exuding his majesty. His charisma felt like a wave of energy that inspired and vitalized those before him. You always make things sound so easy, my lord, but if it is your will, consider it done. Kagura and I will handle Gato's assassination, Malice assured Naruto. Also, our team was lucky enough to come across Zabuza Mamachi and another potential recruit in Zabuza's partner. Zabuza and Sasuke got into a fight, if you can call it that. Sasuke interrupted. Sasuke and Zabuza got into it, and he ended up pretty hurt. I approached him to join and agreed to pending his defeat in a match between the two of us. What we will do is kill two birds with one stone. I'll show both Zabuza and the wave that we are allies they can trust by eliminating the Scourge Gato in front of them. Ah, I see. I'll create a copy of Gato using my spirit reflection puppet and have it lead the militia to your battle site. When you're done with your fight, they'll show up and we will handle gathering the citizens as well. Malice responded. I'm glad we're on the same page, Malice-san. Bando, you'll scout the island for all the resources that will prove fruitful for us. Of course, my lord. Before we depart, I would like to provide you with our latest innovations. Bando placed a case on the ground to reveal 2 pairs of armored boots of black, a black visor with gold trim, and a small black box. We were able to finish the boots you requested and were able to add the ceiling matrices as well. They would be able to conduct your chakra with no issue. We also finished your visor. It's fully equipped with audio and visual recording equipment, as well as the latest in our sensory equipment including chakra and heat sensors, though I doubt you'll need it. For Lord Uchiha, because of your visual prowess, I felt it best to give you a pair of our new wireless chakra transmission communication devices. You can refer to them as the CTC pods for short. Bando opened the small box revealing the 2 small ear communication devices, then handed them to Sasuke. Amazing, I didn't think they would be ready this soon. Naruto picked up his new piece of equipment and marveled over it like a kid with a new toy. Yes, my lord, due much to your sealing expertise, we have our chakra transmission communication network fully up and running. Bando answered. How does this work, Bando? I'm only familiar with a wired communication device. Sasuke placed a pot in each of his ears. Both of your devices are equipped with multiple sealing matrices, many of which were made by your majesty. Because of your constant use of 10, the devices will passively siphon the chakra around you to work. The visor, well equipped, will help you fend off visual genjutsu, and the pods will do the same for auditory genjutsu. Just think of who you would like to speak to, and you'll be patched through to them via mental connection, but it will only be auditory. If you need to get a message out to more than one person, deliver it to the operator, and it will be broadcast to the appropriate channels. Bando explained. We will be able to communicate with each other while our mission is going on. This is perfect. If it wasn't for you guys, I'd be just a lowly peasant. It's because of all of you that I'm proud to call myself a king, Naruto proclaimed. His court providing their cool and collected round of smiles, though on the inside, they felt a bliss they only came to know after dedicating themselves to Naruto. His praise, his happiness, it was like a drug that only made them better. They trusted him because before any of them could, he gave them all his trust with no question. They would do whatever was necessary to see him where he belonged, at the top. I'm excited to test out these boots, Bando. I remember when we got to test the prototypes and the maneuvers, I was able to manage were something I would like to add to my repertoire. Sasuke said as he finished putting on his pair and channeling his chakra to them. Suddenly, Sasuke performed several high-speed dashes, leaps, and other maneuvers, with each new move happening alongside noises reminiscent of miniature explosions. As you can see, Lord Ichigo, you can pull off all the moves you had during your testing phase, with no concern of wear and tear. Uzumaki durability seals are a marvel the world over. Bando himself couldn't figure out the science behind the seals per se, but Naruto would always suggest that the man needed to believe in a bit of magic to understand the intricacies of seals. Their empire was meant to be a paradox, and seals were one method to completing that goal. Naruto put on his boots and did the same, channeling chakra to the result of a humming sound. Naruto with a gust of wind descended off the ground, but corrected himself before going too high. But these I'll be able to be the lord of the sky, as well as land and sea. Ha 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 ha. Naruto flew around back and forth, having the time of his life. I'm glad you're pleased, my lord. Bando had to scream over the sound of the air jets coming out of the boots. Naruto then landed and stopped the flow of chakra to the boots. We are all glad you are pleased, Naruto-sama, but I feel it's best we carry out our respective missions. I will use my Hatsu to help find Gato's hideout. Then Malisan and I will take him out, allowing her to create a copy. The guru was eager to get to work. She wanted an active opportunity to show Naruto that his trust was well placed in her. Plus, she really enjoyed his praise. The guru is correct. The sooner this is done, the sooner we can join with Bando and help with the island scouting. Malice added. She may have been like his mother, but she too enjoyed doing her part in pleasing her king. Perfect everyone, let's all do our best. For the glory of the empire, Naruto shouted, performing a right-hand salute. With everyone following suit. For the glory of the empire. But that Naruto had his clones disable the barrier. We will leave first and will signal you when you can head out. Oh, and if you manage to see any scumbags, and you can get it done clean. They understood their lord's orders. Of course, my lord. I am always more than happy to clean up the realm for you, the guru said seductively. Then I leave its cleaning in your elegant hands. Good luck to all of you. Come Sasuke. Naruto and Sasuke turned and decided to use their new equipment to have a bit of fun before heading back to Tazuna's house. A loud boom was heard as both boys took off for the mineshaft entrance, vanishing from Malice, Kagura, and Bando's side in an instant. It's hard to believe that our king and his strongest knight just became teenagers, Bando said as he closed up the metal chest. Naruto-sama is no mere teen, he is a true man. A king in more ways than one. The guru responded with a bit of attitude. Now you two, before we get distracted, our king has given us a mission. It's our job as his court to turn his will into reality. Malice told the two. You're right, Malisan. Let us move forth to execute our lord's will. The three eagerly awaited until they received the signal to begin their missions. A week later, all remained peaceful in the land of waves, as Team 7 continued their mission to protect Azuna during the bridge's construction. Kakashi had bombarded the boys with questions on where they obtained Naruto's new visor and the new boots they were wearing. Naruto responded that they had come across a giant with a kind heart, and that said giant was gracious enough to give them these accessories. Kakashi surmised that it was some story he had made up that would quickly get Kakashi to stop pestering them. Upon their return, Naruto and Sasuke were introduced to Inari, Tazuna's grandson, and Tsunami's son. Inari was a young boy with spiky black hair and dark-colored eyes. He wore a green jumpsuit with a yellow shirt and a simple pair of sandals. He also wore a blue and white striped hat under the brim. The boy was rude from the start, ignoring Naruto's introduction. It took a bit of self-control for Sasuke not to put a dent in the child's skull, just to teach him a lesson. They learned later that night from Tazuna that Inari's demeanor was due to the death of his stepfather, Kaiza. Kaiza, as Tazuna described, was a man of the people. He was brave and generous, and would put his all towards everything he did, even defying Gato when he first came to the wave. Tazuna even compared him to Naruto, saying they shared similarities. For going against Gato, he was publicly executed brutally, having both his arms cut off to enhance his suffering. After a while, they finished him off, all while Inari was watching in the crowd. After that, Inari became a lot more pessimistic, believing that hope was just for fools with a death wish. Tazuna asked the boys to be tolerant of his grandson. Inari was scared and didn't know how to properly handle his trauma, so he lashed out. Naruto and Sasuke could understand this better than Tazuna could ever know, so the boys did as Tazuna asked. There had been a couple of other developments that occurred within the week. Team 7 would split each day to execute their tasks, with Naruto escorting Tazuna to the bridge, Sasuke guarding Tsunami, and Inari at their home, with Kakashi taking Sakura off to train. They had Sakura practice the tree and water walking techniques, which due to her low chakra reserves and seemingly high chakra control, she was able to master in about 2 days. He decided to move on to elemental manipulation and tested her affinity, which turned out to be earth. From there, Kakashi began instructing Sakura in 2 low-rank earth jutsu, Earth Style, Earth Golem and Earth Style, Rock Shelter. The Earth Golem would help increase her attacking potential, while providing a means to protect her as well, while the Rock Shelter jutsu was meant to help increase her defensive capabilities. Sakura gave her all to training. It was clear to her that Naruto and Sasuke were in a league all their own. She was even convinced that they had surpassed their sensei in terms of strength. She knew if she wanted Sasuke to even acknowledge her, she would have to give him something to notice. With that being said, Sakura had made respectable progress. She was able to form a golem that was about a foot taller than her and was quite strong when Kakashi spared it. She was also able to pull off a decently reinforced rock shelter that took a couple of hits from Kakashi before breaking down. Kakashi and Sakura had tried to get the 2 boys to join in on the training, but they would use the mission as an excuse not to attend. Now, the team was having dinner alongside their gracious hosts. Kakashi and Sakura had recently returned from a day of training, so Sakura was covered in a light layer of dirt and looked pretty exhausted. "Damn, Kakashi, what did you do to the little lady?" Tazuna managed to ask through his snickering. "She went through a hard day of training. Sakura gave it her all today and I'm proud of her." Kakashi delivered his signature eye smile. "So tired," was all Sakura was able to say, not able to lift her head off the dinner table. "Well, after a hard day's work, it's important to eat a healthy meal, so everyone please eat your fill." Tsunami walked over and placed more bowls of food on the table. It was then that Inari walked through the front door and into the kitchen. "Inari, you're home late. Where were you?" Tsunami asked. "Out," Inari answered in a low tone with a hint of attitude. "Out where, young man?" His tone was clearly not appreciated. "Just out. Leave me alone," Inari shouted as he walked past his mother and tried to go up the stairs to his room. "Inari," the atmosphere in the room shifted. It was colder and the air seemed thinner as well. Everyone turned to look at Naruto, who called for the boy. "Your mother has asked you a question. You will answer her honestly and with respect." Naruto said and proceeded to eat his dinner. "That's shut up. I don't have to listen to you. You're not my dad." Naruto applauded the boy's guts. He knew he had to be feeling the effects of his aura, yet he was still able to shout at him. Naruto placed his bowl on the table and walked over to Inari. "You're right. I am not your father. I've heard a good deal about the man, and it would be an honor to be compared to someone of his prestige. He was brave, strong, and kind. If I had been fortunate enough to have had a father, I would have hoped he would have been like Kaiza." The Nari's eyes began to tear up. "Shut up. You don't know anything about my dad. You don't know anything about me." The Nari lashed out after hearing his father's name and started to pelt Naruto with his fists. "I wasn't lucky enough to grow up with a mother or father. Fortunately, there were those who have come into my life, each one having an incomparable impact on the person before you. I'm sorry your father was lost to you, but he gave his life for the people of his land. His people haven't forgotten him, regardless of how it may seem. The Wave aren't the type who would spit on the legacy of such a great man, and you shouldn't either." The Nari stopped his tantrum and continued to listen to Naruto, with tears flowing down his face. "Your grandfather is doing just as your father, as well as those who are risking much to assist him. These are your father's people, Inari. They might have been knocked down, but they haven't forgotten Kaiza's sacrifice. I'm sure they'd love if you were among them, honoring his memory." Naruto knelt down to meet Inari eye to eye. "I know you must miss your father, but he lives on in you, Inari. Kaiza lives on in all those in this land who are doing their best to live. You shouldn't give up no matter how tough, no matter how sad. You must try and try." The Nari's eyes lit up when he heard his father's old words. Tazuna shared with Naruto Kaiza's favorite phrase during one of their conversations. "If you do that, even if you die, the proof of a man's life will remain forever." Inari wiped his eyes and spoke out in the most positive manner his mother and grandfather had heard from him in a while. Don't forget those words, Inari. Age doesn't make you a man, it's your actions, and the correct action would be to apologize to your mother for your earlier behavior. I'm sure this has been hard on her as well. Naruto smiled and rose, gesturing towards Tsunami. The mother was a bit overwhelmed. Tsunami knew Inari was struggling after Kaisa's death, but didn't know how to help him. Inari shut down, trying to push everyone away to not be hurt again. She had been dealing with her grief but pushed it below the surface to appear well and cheery for the sake of her son. She began to doubt her abilities as a mother. She even wondered if it would have been better for Inari to have lost her and kept Kaisa. Mom. I am really sorry for how I acted. I really miss Dad. And I didn't know Inari tried his best to apologize and give his mother an explanation for his behavior, but he was cut off as Tsunami kneeled and wrapped him in her motherly embrace. It's alright, my dear. I understand I miss him too, I'm just glad that I have you, Inari. Tsunami was overjoyed. She believed that Inari would be alright and that now time would be able to heal his wounds. Tsunami looked at Naruto while she was still hugging Inari and gave him a bright smile. She couldn't thank the boy enough. He showed her late husband the utmost respect, even without meeting him. Naruto also was patient and sympathetic when it came to Inari, even though he was just a shinobi on a job. Thanks a lot, Naruto. Azuna had walked up to the blonde and placed his hand on his shoulder. Tazuna didn't have too many people he respected in his life, but he felt that Naruto had earned it in spades. No need to thank me, Sir Tazuna. A king takes care of the realm, for he is nothing without its inhabitants, Naruto said, as he crossed his arms and gave a sage bow. Kakashi, Sakura, and Sasuke just looked on as events developed. Sasuke sported a small grin while the other two just stared blankly. Kakashi felt that Naruto's speech to Inari held a bunch of underlined messages. Naruto spoke about sacrifices, fathers, and how the people of the wave wouldn't disrespect Kaisa's legacy. Kakashi also thought back on the conversation he had with Naruto about respecting his sensei, coming to the conclusion that Naruto must have known about his father. This revelation frightened Kakashi to his core, for if Naruto knew of his father, he most likely knew of the tailed beast secured within himself. With this in mind, the suspension that the Kyuubi could have been behind Naruto's alterations became a more likely possibility. Naruto's choice of words made Kakashi worry more. The way he spoke, it sounded as if Naruto felt the village had disrespected his father's legacy somehow. Kakashi felt it better to keep this to himself and report to the third upon their return. Sakura's opinion of Naruto began to change once again. She went from thinking he was a nobody when they were kids, to an annoying nobody in the academy, then to some kind of monster or demon, once she was assigned on a team with him. Now she thought that maybe it wasn't as simple as him being one of those things, and maybe she didn't know the first thing about him or Sasuke for that matter. Well, it's a beautiful night to go for a stroll, so I think I'll do just that, Naruto said as he turned for the exit with Sasuke rising from the dinner table to put his dishes in the sink. Thank you for the meal, Lady Tsunami. We will be back after checking the perimeter. Sasuke gave a polite bow as Naruto, and he exited. The two walked off into the forest until they came to a glade. They were then greeted by two familiar figures that were coming from the other side. Zabuza Mamachi and his mysterious partner. To what do I owe the pleasure? Naruto asked as Sasuke put his right hand on his blade. I'm all healed up from what the other kid did to me. You and I made a deal, so I'm here to see it through. Zabuza grabbed his blade with his right hand and gave a downward swing of it in a show of intimidation. I'm sorry to ask, but do you mind if we hold off till tomorrow? Naruto scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. But you think I'm a fool, boy. No, I don't. That's precisely why I'm asking you to wait. Tomorrow, we will have our bout on the bridge. But there has been a change. Zabuza didn't think they were about to try anything, but he still didn't like how things were playing out. What change would that be? It was Haku that took a step forward. She would not stand if someone was trying to pull one over on her master. You see, we initially planned on recruiting Zabuza to our cause, but we knew nothing of a follower. And while it is nice that you said you would join if Zabuza did, we know nothing of you or your abilities. The same way Zabuza would like to test my abilities, I would like to test yours. This was unexpected. Neither Zabuza nor Haku would have guessed that the boy would put so much thought into this. What sort of test were you thinking of? Will I have to go against your friend? Haku asked, looking toward Sasuke. No, I believe he has done his part. I believe a better test of your abilities would be to see how you fare against Kakashi Haddock. You want me to fight your team leader? I don't understand. I told you before what type of person we were looking for to join our empire, but we still have standards. Haddock is the best Konoha has to offer, and if you can best him, then there's no question of whether you belong amongst our ranks. Even though it was the dark of night, Zabuza and Haku saw it in Naruto's deep blue eyes. He was a leader, making every choice and analyzing every factor for the sake of those that called him king. They both had a similar thought, though Zabuza wouldn't admit it. Maybe a king, maybe this king, wouldn't be so bad. We gotcha, you and I will have a go while Haku deals with Haddock. Naruto grew a large smile on his face, confusing the two. Haku. That's a beautiful name for such a beautiful maiden. Haku was never so happy to have been wearing a mask as she was now, for it was the only thing hiding her bright rosy flushed cheeks. Then it settled. We will meet tomorrow on the bridge. You both have a lovely night and welcome to the Empire, Naruto said as he and Sasuke turned around and left. He seems rather confident, doesn't he, Zabuza-sama? Do you believe that he will be able to best you? Haku knew they weren't normal shinobi, but she knew firsthand of Zabuza's true strength. I guess we'll know tomorrow. Come on Haku, let's find something to eat. Zabuza was anxious, but he knew whatever happened, tomorrow was going to be an interesting day. Next day, Team 7 had been up bright and early to match Tezuna's schedule. The moment the sun rose meant it was time to get to work. Tsunami had gotten up early as well to make sure they all went off into the world with full stomachs. Inari was up early as well, intent on joining his grandfather on the bridge and providing whatever assistance he could. Naruto's words sparked a new fire in the young boy. He wanted to help his homeland much like his father did, even if it was something small here and there. Tazuna had his reservations about it, but with one word from Naruto about how there was nothing to worry about, Tazuna was more than happy to have a day together with his beloved grandson. Kakashi and Sakura also planned on joining for guard duty today. Kakashi believed it was a good idea for Sakura's training to include on-the-job training, including the guard work her teammates had been in charge of. Though Sakura was disappointed to hear that Sasuke would be staying back with Tsunami. With most of the team off guarding Tazuna and Inari, Tsunami would become an easier target, so Sasuke would be her guard. With that, the group left for the bridge and managed to arrive with no complications. The other workers soon arrived and the work on the bridge continued. Kakashi hadn't checked up on Naruto during the week of guard duty, but was a bit surprised to find that he and the 4 clones he had summoned were interacting with all the people on the bridge by their first names, shaking hands, and even having a crowd of them laughing at some of his jokes. Regardless of anything, it seems he's got Sensei's charisma. Kakashi's train of thought was broken when he heard some screaming at one end of the bridge. Assassins. It's Gato's thugs. Run. They'll kill you us all. The workers on the bridge were scrambling, trying their best not to end up victims. Everyone, there's no need to worry. These two are not here to hurt you. Naruto projected his voice over the bridge so all could hear him. They then watched on as the 2 new arrivals walked up to Naruto, Tazuna, and Inari, who were standing behind his grandfather. Kakashi and Sakura rushed to their side. End of the bridge good? Zabuza asked. But for what? What's going on, Zabuza? Kakashi shouted as he pulled out a kunai. That's perfect. Naruto then summoned a smokeless shadow clone. Sir Tazuna, Inari, these 2 are here to see me and wish you no harm, so please relax. We will take our business away from everyone. And please do not worry about any damage to the bridge. I have taken the appropriate measures to ensure its safety. Tazuna just began to laugh. Well, if the king has spoken, then there's nothing to be worried about, right? Tazuna held a gleeful grin and extended his fist out with Naruto matching his actions. Of course. A king is his word. Naruto, what the hell is going on? Kakashi had hit his limit. He wanted answers and he would get them. Yay Naruto, this isn't some kind of game. We got to take this seriously, Sakura said sheepishly. Kakashi, we are just going to have a little meeting, Naruto said as he, Zabuza, and Haku used the shunshin to get to the end of the bridge. Son of a bitch. Sakura, you stay with Tazuna and the clone, I'll be back. Kakashi shot forward using his own shunshin. When Kakashi arrived, he saw the 2 assassins standing in front of Naruto. Naruto, this is a direct order from your commanding officer. Answer my questions now. Kakashi moved to get near Naruto, but was cut off when Haku appeared before him. Their opponent is me, Kakashi Haddock. Haku said, assuming her fighting stance. Damn it Kakashi-sensei, it seems the enemy has engaged us both. You'll have to wait till I've dealt with my opponent, Naruto said in a sarcastic tone. The temperature seemed to drop, or maybe it was rising. The air thinned, or was it thicker? The atmosphere fluctuated as Naruto reached for the short blade by his side. As he drew his sword, they were all thrown by the fact that the blade was far longer than its sheath. In Naruto's hands was an adachi with a deep blue blade and a black hilt wrapped in bandages matching the blade. The Nikki. Cold front. Naruto swung his sword and everyone felt a chill. Suddenly a wall of ice formed, separating Naruto and Zabuza from Kakashi and Haku. Naruto, Kakashi shouted. The ice wall was thick to the point that Kakashi couldn't see through it. That is most ironic. Who would have thought that Zabuza would be facing an ice user as well? Kakashi asked, staring at his masked opponent until he felt a sharp pain in the back of his left arm. He checked it to find he had been struck with a senbon, but his opponent didn't throw any. I would hope you take this match seriously, Kakashi Haddock. If you get distracted for just a moment, you will die, Haku said as she decided to end this quickly. Kakashi was still a Jonin level threat, and she took no threat lightly. One lucky shot and you think you've won, big mistake. Kakashi raised his headband revealing the Sharingan in his left eye. I see. You are special Haddock, but not the same way we are. Aku said as she made a single one-handed sign. What are you talking about? Kakashi could feel it getting colder and colder. It wasn't hard to assume that Haku was building up chakra, but couldn't tell for what purpose. Suddenly, they were surrounded by what looked like mirrors, reflecting the two combatants in each one. The ones you call Naruto and Sasuke. They are like me, special in a way that the world fears. Now that we've begun our meeting, you two will know that fear. Land of Waves. Unfinished bridge. Pay Naruto. Or should I say clone Naruto? Izuna asked a clone. You needn't worry about such small things. I may be His Majesty's clone, but you can refer to me however you'd like. Alright, I know this is a weird question, but do you think we can move closer to see the fight? This is surprising. Who would have thought you would be interested in such a dangerous matter? Izuna couldn't lie, he was intrigued. He didn't know much about shinobi, though he was starting to understand Naruto. The boy maintained a constant state of control, not just on himself but on everything around him. Izuna felt he had to see if the might of one called himself king. I understand, and you are in luck. I believe I have a safer alternative. The clone then reached into its hori and pulled out a small gourd, opened it up, and poured out water on the bridge surface. What are you doing, Naruto? Sakura was curious what the water was for. Nothing of interest. Do me a favor and look into the puddle for me, Sakura. The clone gestured and Sakura complied. She stared at the puddle for a minute as the water seemed to slowly spin like a mini whirlpool. She began to feel more and more tired until she could no longer fight the urge to rest her eyes. Sakura suddenly fell unconscious and was caught by Naruto's clone before she could fall to the ground. What did you do to her, kid? Izuna asked. Just a little illusion to help her get her beauty rest. If you want you can gather the others to watch as well. It isn't every day you get to see a king in action. The clone pulled out 2 more water gourds and poured them on the existing puddle. This resulted in a rather large puddle resting on the surface of the bridge as Izuna and Inari turned to gather the rest of the bridge workers. They were scared, but they were also very excited. This was probably going to be the only shinobi battle that many of them will get to witness, so many pushed down that fear for the chance. Telescope Jutsu. The clone performed several hand signs and placed his hand on the puddle. The green wave of energy spread across the puddle before an image came into view. The people saw Naruto with a blade in his hand standing across from the assassin who also had his weapon handy. The onlookers commented about how cool Naruto was and how they hoped he came out on top. Will Naruto Nai be alright? Inari asked. Naruto took the time to give Inari a firm reminder of how to be a man like his father and encapsulated many of his father's qualities. It might have been overnight, but Inari came to see Naruto as an older brother-like figure. Of course, His Majesty won't lose. Not when his realm is watching. His realm? Yes. His Majesty, Emperor Uzumaki has come to enjoy the wave and its people. He has decided that it will become part of the great Uzumaki Empire. He will free you all of the scourge that plagues this land and bring the wave to a new age of prosperity. If he could free us from Geto, then I'll call him king, said one of the workers. Me too. Go King Naruto, screamed another. Soon a lot of workers were cheering and chanting, hoping that the blonde shinobi would liberate them from their oppressor. It looks like the kids made an impression on everyone. Izuna was happy to see this much hope among his people. Alright everyone, it's about to start, the clone said, and everyone around settled down, ready to watch how a king fought. Kakashi and Haku. Kakashi had been revered as a prodigy, a genius for his entire life. Sure, he had come across others of the same title, and some of them surpassed him in caliber, but he was still confident in himself and his talent. At least, he was confident until a couple of months ago. His fight with Naruto and Sasuke played out in the back of his mind constantly. Sasuke played with him, and the more he thought about the boy's movements and maneuvers, the more certain he became that Sasuke had been able to influence his movements and reactions. Engaging Naruto felt like a match against Might Guy. No, if Kakashi was being honest, the boy might have hit harder than Guy. Naruto also immobilized him, and he knew what that would have meant out in the field. If they weren't his allies, or should he say, if they wouldn't have gotten in trouble for it, they could have killed him. Now here he was, having that confidence tested again by a young woman who had to have been at least half his age. She had trapped them in the dome of 21 floating mirrors made out of ice. 12 remained at ground level, 8 floated above the first 12 and angled toward the ground, and the final mirror was above the rest and facing the ground. Any attempts to escape resulted in him avoiding a projectile to the eye. Kakashi also tried to use some of his Earth-style escape jutsu, but found they wouldn't work. Haku's technique made her incredibly fast to the point where Kakashi's Sharingan had a hard time keeping up with her, meaning she had a constant element of surprise. Whenever she would throw a projectile or jutsu at him, he would dodge it, and it would enter one of the mirrors. Either instantly or after a delay, whatever went in the mirror would come out to attack him once more. She had also jumped in the mirror to avoid his attacks and respond in kind with her projectile attacks or perform high-speed movements from one mirror to another. Now they were locked in another Taijutsu bout with Kakashi on the offensive. I'm surprised at how much I'm enjoying myself. No need to hold back, but no need to kill. Have I ever had a chance to just test my abilities? Haku thought back. Her whole life had been one fight after another, with her honing her skills by spilling blood. This was the first time she had ever been able to use her abilities without the intention to kill. Haku's chain of thought was broken as Kakashi was able to land a kick to her chest, creating a good amount of distance between the two. Higher style. Fire Dragon Bullet. Kakashi weaved through the signs and expelled a powerful stream of flame from his mouth towards Haku. The masked Kunoichi managed to jump out the way of the fire plum and phased into the mirror behind her. The flame clashed with a mirror, with the frozen sheet surviving the attack unscathed. Once again Kakashi was surrounded by the image of Haku reflected in each of the 21 mirrors. You're faring rather well, Haddock. I haven't been able to land another hit on you since we began. You have earned your reputation. What are you guys up to? Your target was right in front of you, yet you chose to engage us. Kakashi was trying his best to wrap his mind around the situation. Those are my orders. My lord has asked me to fight you to show my worth. Haku answered, though she thought of both Naruto and Zabuza. Zabuza didn't know, but Haku spied on Team 7 during the last week. She saw nothing special from Kakashi or Sakura, usually training in the forest, but Haku saw Naruto interact with everyone he came across. He would always ask for people's names and treated everyone with respect. The kids of the village had even interacted with him and called him the cool blonde brother, though she had to wonder why he was sending so many clones out into the village all the time. Naruto was much like her, a kind and gentle soul who could become a heartless monster if necessary. She couldn't explain it, she never felt it before, but she could see herself being a tool for his use. Then Zabuza must be losing his touch. You won't be able to beat me, and I think you know that. That isn't to say that you aren't very skilled. Kakashi then charged up his legendary Chidori, figuring he would need higher attack potency than his fire jutsu to break the mirrors. To be honest with you, this technique requires me to use a lot of chakra to maintain. Secret art. Demonic ice mirrors. It's my strongest defensive jutsu. I know I'll have to push myself past my limits if I want to best you. Haku wasn't a fool. Kakashi was one of the strongest people she had faced to date, and though she wasn't going out of her way to kill him, she wasn't holding back. Kakashi then shot forward and struck one of the mirrors with his lightning-clad hand, shattering it instantly. He gained a bit more distance before turning around to see the remaining mirrors, still in place, and the wall Naruto made going across both sides of the bridge. Kakashi then saw Haku appear in the center of the dome. She formed a one-handed sign and the mirrors melted, the water falling and splashing on the ground. Haddock. I would like to see if I can be more than just a tool, just once. Haku felt so strange. She had never felt the need to improve or surpass anyone, let alone herself. Her purpose was to be useful to the man that saved her life. So why did she want to try? Why did she want to improve? You can just surrender. I have no interest in killing someone who isn't trying to kill me. I can understand that, but you'll just have to continue humoring me. Haku manipulated the water at her feet into the air and used them to create frozen spears that flew in Kakashi's direction. Higher style. Phoenix Flower Jutsu. Kakashi launched a fireball that split into many miniature fireballs, colliding and neutralizing the ice attack. The thick mist resulted from the clash, covering the portion of the bridge they were fighting on. Kakashi, using his Sharingan, could tell that his opponent was moving in for a sneak attack via the mist, and figured another fistfight was most likely his best way of finishing the match. He put up his left hand to block a forward kick for Haku, but felt an intense burning sensation from his hand upon contact. He immediately let go, jumped back, and looked down to see his hand covered in blisters and burns, and his gloves somewhat burned together with his skin. The mirror appeared and Haku shot at Kakashi at an insane speed. Kakashi saw a smoking shard of ice covering her right hand. As quickly as he could, Kakashi made a single-handed shadow clone that was able to push him out the way before Haku thrust through it. The clone then erupted into a current of electricity, shocking Haku and bringing her to her knees. Kakashi walked up to her. It's over, alright. I don't know what you did, but you don't have the stamina to keep this up anymore. Kakashi was a bit winded himself, plus his hand was killing him. He could hardly move it. The mist then erupted from around Haku. Kakashi found himself feeling a similar burning sensation all over and jumped back as fast as he could. He was having difficulty breathing and had to close his eyes, keeping the left one closed due to the stinging pain he felt. Haku lunged at Kakashi once more, beginning another hand-to-hand exchange. Kakashi felt the stinging every time he blocked an attack, but found he was quickly beating Haku. After a small exchange, Kakashi blocked a right hook from the girl, delivered a swift knee strike, then a powerful elbow to the top of her head, seemingly knocking her unconscious. Kakashi tried his best to catch his breath as he looked down at his opponent. He kneeled to remove her mask, but then she cracked. He couldn't react fast enough, his world turned black. Kakashi fell on the ground with Haku standing over him, breathing haggardly. Her body was riddled with electrical burns, and it took all her strength to remain standing. Haku was able to come out on top simply by the element of surprise. She had dabbled with freezing and solidifying the carbon dioxide in the air before, but found little use for it due to the amount of concentration it took. She felt foolish ignoring that the trade-off for the high level of concentration was a great deal of attack and defense potency at a relatively low cost. She already possessed a high caliber of chakra control, so it wasn't too strenuous for her. The gas she was able to make alone could harm and debilitate her opponent quite well, and she thought her dry ice blade would have been effective too if she would have hit her target. After using her surprise gas attack, she made an ice clone, while Kakashi had his eyes closed. The clone acted as a distraction with a majority of her remaining chakra, while she laid waiting for her perfect opportunity to strike. This victory is mine purely by luck, I guess I do need to become stronger. Haku then picked up Kakashi, bringing him to the clone Naruto left behind. He was the one who wanted her to fight him, so she figured he would know what to do in the case she was able to defeat him. Though she found herself wondering how the fight between Zabuza and the original Naruto was going, she made it towards Naruto and a crowd of the bridge workers surrounding him. Haku also noticed the pink-haired female sleeping on one side of the bridge. Upon her arrival with the Jimnin over her shoulder, the crowd became weary. Amazing. His Majesty will be most pleased by this development. To think we would happen upon such a rare Kekkei Genkai, His Majesty truly is beloved by fortune. Never fear, my dear friends, she is one of us. Oh, and here come some more friends. Suddenly 2 newcomers appeared, one on each side of the clone. Hello Clone Sama, I see His Majesty has already begun his fight with Zabuza. Bando spoke. The crowd marveled at the massiveness of the man. Yes, and it looks like he's using Funiki. He must respect Momochi a great deal. The beauty which Malice spoke, drawing the attention of the men in an instant. Who knew that the kid had such foxy friends? Azuna had to remember to introduce him to more of his friends after all this. His Majesty knows many. Malice, and can you please tend to our new friend's wounds? Malice then walked up to Haku and grabbed her hand. Haku had never felt a hand so soft. It is a pleasure to meet you, Haku. My name is Malice. If you don't mind, I'd like to tend to your wounds. Yes, thank you. Haku didn't know what else to say. She was hurt, and if they were going to heal her, she wasn't going to say no. Everyone, they're about to go at it. The clone notified the audience. I didn't know the kid had a long sword. I've only seen that little one he's got on him, Azuna asked, sparking the curiosity of a couple of onlookers. Many had seen Naruto over the week and noticed he only carried a small blade. That blade and the one Naruto-sama holds are the very same. It's the only weapon fit for a king of his caliber. Malice responded. You guys call him king too. Is it for real? The crowd had to know now, who was Naruto? Yes, it is of course true. Naruto-sama is the emperor of the Uzumaki Empire, and he would like to ask for this great land to join our family. He is not foolish enough to believe you will join him simply because he asked. He would like you all to witness the might he will use to protect us, his realm. Malice proclaimed, receiving whispers and chatter amongst the crowd. It soon died down as they watched a man called king. He deserved his utmost attention. But Naruto and Zabuza, the two had stared at each other for several minutes. Neither one moved, it didn't even look as if they were breathing. Zabuza observed every muscle of his opponent. He had fought Sasuke, and that had been one of the hardest fights of his life. He was being toyed with the entire time, and he didn't think he could have done anything about it at the time. He was too naive, or maybe too cocky was more accurate. These were not kids, and to treat them as such meant certain death. Can you use ice ninjutsu? That wall behind us looks rather impressive. Zabuza was a bit nervous. He knew what Haku was capable of, and he never thought he would come across another ice user. No, nothing crazy like that, Naruto said casually while making a waving gesture. Oh, so I guess you're not that special after all. Zabuza had only a moment to place his blade before him to block Naruto's downward slash. He had felt as if someone had thrown a boulder at him. No, I meant that ice ninjutsu would be far too mundane for me. If I go crazy, it has to make no sense. Naruto then pushed Zabuza forward, causing him to slide till his back hit the ice wall. Zabuza felt like he had been pushed by some kind of invisible hammer. You did well against my tremor, but let's see how you handle this. Uzumaki sword style. Rapids. Naruto shot forward towards Zabuza, and upon appearing before him, began a rapid tempo of forwarding thrusts with his sword. Zabuza moved faster than he ever had before, blocking as many strikes as he could with the wide side of his blade. But Zabuza, very good. Now let's try rushing rapids. Naruto thrusts multiplied. Zabuza couldn't keep up and found himself slashed multiple times. He felt the ice shavings from the wall on his body, the boy's attack being that wide and destructive. The moment there was a lapse in the boy's assault, Zabuza swung his sword in a horizontal arc, causing Naruto to jump back. Zabuza quickly moved away from the wall towards his left, trying to keep out to the blonde's range until he was ready to strike. Hopefully, his arms would stop vibrating by then. Zabuza, if we are to become friends and allies, we are going to have to get closer. Uzumaki sword style. Vacuum. Naruto sheathed and unsheathed his sword in one fluid motion while performing a spin. Zabuza was yanked off his feet and with a strong pull, was sent towards his foe. Zabuza decided to use the forward momentum to enhance a downward strike. Yes, Zabuza. Use all at your disposal and face me. Big wave. Naruto continued his spin until he had spun around completely and made contact with Zabuza's blade. The result of their clash was a shockwave that managed to push Zabuza back a bit. I must admit, you are a lot stronger than I would have ever guessed. Zabuza began to channel his chakra. This Kubikurumjm adopted a blood-red aura around it. You know, I haven't had to use this technique since I went against Igura, but you are definitely an opponent that deserves my best. I'll show you everything I've got. The Kubikurumjm shrunk in width. It looked the same, it just wasn't as wide. Zabuza launched forward with a newfound speed and delivered a flurry of thrusts and swings at the boy. At first, his attack seemed to put Naruto on the defensive, but after a couple more swings, Zabuza found it harder and harder to continue. It was as if something was holding his sword every time he tried to swing it. Interesting technique, Zabuza. I'm glad to see you still have more in your bag of tricks, but so do I. Torrential wave. Naruto performed a downward slash that sent a wave of pressurized water at Zabuza. The wave crashed with Kubikurumjm as Zabuza executed a downward slash of his own. He noted that the attack felt like a B-ranked water jutsu, but Zabuza ultimately fended off the attack. The two engaged each other once again in a high-speed kenjutsu battle. Naruto executed many different types of maneuvers and seemed to be able to move to any position around Zabuza. The missing nin had never witnessed sword techniques of this level. Every attack Naruto had thrown at him was fast and fluid, with tons of power behind them. The kid was like an ocean, calm and fluid 1 second, then insanely powerful and unpredictable the next. Naruto was having a great deal of fun. Zabuza was a more than respectable kenjutsu practitioner. His attacks may have been big, and his weapon was bigger, but Zabuza had speed, power, and accuracy. There wasn't a single wasted movement in any of his attacks. The two were now locked into a stalemate. Zabuza, it seems I'm not the only one with a special sword. Tell me what that ability was you performed earlier, and why is the sword smaller? Naruto was curious. Whatever the move was, Zabuza's combat capabilities by what seemed like double. I've heard and even seen a couple of the idiots hold this blade, but not one of them understood it. Kubikurumjm is a weapon that devours the iron in the blood to repair itself, but it can also be used to strengthen its user, injecting iron in their body and allowing for an increase in blood oxygen. I call it demon's injection. What an apt name for a demon. Naruto broke the stalemate off and jumped back, avoiding a horizontal slash in the process. I guess it's only fair to tell you about my blade. This weapon is of great importance to me. It is one of my oldest allies and I love her with all my heart and soul.